So it is Modern Craftsman Monday. I'm back. Nick is absent. John is here, although his photo on our Squadcast was paused for about 50% of the episode. We should get a picture of this, of you. You have like this mean mug face on right now.
Mine's black.
Is it?
Yeah, completely. That's why I tried to refresh it like 100 times.
No, you are not black on my end. You have this like biting your lip right now. I'll have to send a picture of it to you. But today we have on Casey from the Conscious Builder to talk about his business. He's based out of Ontario, Canada, and he's doing some high level builds, really into energy efficient homes, controlling air leakage, and we get into that some. We get into he's looking to kind of expand his business and his reasons for doing so, and his family, and kind of branch off and have a little bit of a media division there. And we kind of get on a little bit of a tangent regarding how we would like to see more of the industry approach that, with more authenticity, and kind of the route that this old house takes, where, you're using products that you believe in, not because they're throwing money on your lap, which I think would be beneficial to everyone. What else did we talk about? Just him getting started in the industry, which is pretty typical, kind of where he's heading, where he hopes to be. I like your conversation, John, with the all the energy efficiency. We just don't build that way down where I am, so it's always interesting to hear that.
It's a topic that we should hit more. Just not just efficiencies, but health of the home. And we talked to a thing with Ben Bogey, the carbon footprint of a home. I think it's something that it should be a bigger conversation. And figured would ask, since he's into that part of it. So it was cool.
And it was nice because it was we didn't dig into details there, and we didn't really get into the nitty gritty. So a lot of times you can get lost in the science of that. We didn't really get into that. It was just more of the bigger picture and what's important and why we should be going that route. But hopefully you guys and girls like the podcast. We missed Nick. He usually shapes the conversation pretty well, but John and I did our best. So we do appreciate your patience in dealing with us amateur podcasters. If you're looking for high-performance siding, matching moldings, look no further than Duration. Not only do the products check all the boxes in terms of durability, workability, sustainability, and overall good looks, but the products are readily available and the pricing has remained stable throughout the pandemic. How many products can say that? Not many. A few, but not many. If you've worked with polyash before, you know how it performs. If you haven't, you owe it to yourself to give it a try. To learn more about Duration polyash products, please visit their website at durationmillwork.com and be sure to follow them on IG, especially with lumber and I feel like moldings, everything, plywood. It's nice that they're putting out a product that has remained stable, and the price, nobody's gotten slammed, and there's availability and everything else, which is saying a lot for the given state of the industry.
100%. I think setting expectations has been one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah,
just because everything's a moving target, and
you can set them. Managing them's a little bit harder.
Oh, even setting them is tough, dude. Because like you set it and you try and be transparent, and then it moves. It's a moving target. Then people question everything, and as they should. And it puts you in a really tough spot. It wakes me up at 3 a.m. I'm honestly,
especially it's not like one or two things changing. It's everything.
Yeah, and it just puts me I'm not in a comfortable state.
But Duration won't change.
No.
So that should be a consistent.
I have it on my house and I love it. I checked the outside miters because I mited on my V-groove around my office. Money, dude. Money. Damn. I'm gonna put the credit on the carpentry skills. Not
it's gotta be.
Product.
The product moves, but all right, guys and girls. Well, thank you. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Nick will be back next week, hopefully.
But I think we should just start with Casey, who you are and what you're all about.
But not the sales pitch version. Just like really, what's up?
Yeah. How'd you get into it? Is it your parents' fault? Like what's going on?
It's because school. I was not very good at school. That's the fault. That's what happened. So yeah, if we want to start there, the I guess from a construction background, nobody in my family was in construction. Uh, for me, it was just something that I was really good at school. And I went through school knowing that I wanted to build stuff, but I didn't really know who built stuff, right? I didn't know about carpentry in grade 9 sort of thing. But when I started taking shop class, I started to realize that obviously I was good at that. And as I started to realize that I could go into an apprenticeship, all of my other classes that I was going through to become a mechanical engineer the grade started to slowly drop and drop as I got through high school, and everything just grew from there. I got out of high school and I got right into construction and started an apprenticeship and worked for a company for only one company for almost 7 years, and then decided I was always doing side jobs. And then after that, decided to go on my own and been learning the tough world of business ever since.
So how old are you now?
Now I'd think about 35.
35. So you've had your business 10 years?
Yeah, 11. This is our 11th year now. So I started in construction when I was 17.
And what was that? What was that first company that you worked for?
What did they do, or who was it?
Yeah.
It was a small company. They did renovations and custom homes, and he was getting into a lot of development, like buying up pieces of land and tearing the houses down and building like a semi or 2 semis or something like that. So I got a good amount of experience, and I was running jobs. I think when I was 19 was the first job I ran. So he gave me some opportunity, and there's a couple great carpenters that worked for him that I learned a ton from.
So what, when you first got into this, and before I forget, where are you located?
Ottawa, Ontario.
Okay. So when you first got into it, you were more hands-on, or were you looking to get into management?
I was hands-on, but I started to enjoy the business side. And even now, the last year and a bit, I became more hands-on again, just because we were doing more with our YouTube channel. And then we ended up with COVID hitting, things slowed down, but then picked right up again, and we didn't have enough manpower, couldn't find it. So it's the same thing that every contractor out there is dealing with. So I've been swinging the hammer for the last year and a bit, but I'm just finishing up the job, and we found some good new team members. So be able to catch up on all the other things I've been falling behind on.
So you went back to swinging the hammer just because you couldn't find help?
Partly because we didn't have the help for the one project, but the other one was also because we were doing a YouTube show for that.
Oh, okay. And so when you started working for this company, you were 17, 18 years old probably?
Yes.
And what was your role initially in that company?
Well, I went in knowing that they were going to put me as an apprentice. So I don't know what their role was, but I was working kind of under the guys that were leading the jobs. At the time, he only had, I think I was employee number 5, like in terms of who he had. He's had all sorts of other people, but he kind of had it was the boss who wasn't swinging the hammer, his 2 top guys that had been with him for years and years and years. They're really good friends. And then myself, and there's a couple other guys, they all ended up leaving, and I stayed for 7 years. So I ended up kind of being number 3 by the time I was gone. But like I said, it kind of, because of how that worked out, I was given a lot of opportunity really young.
So at 18, you go in pretty green and you're working for this company. And by 19, you're running jobs. What are the scope of those jobs that you're running at that point? Because I know you said you guys were doing renovations and also full builds.
Yeah. So the first job I ran was an addition on a house, just a small addition. So it would have been a kitchen renovation and addition with an ICF foundation and not much, I had to reframe the roof. So it wasn't huge by any means, but for a first job, it was fairly complex in terms of what had to be done. And then I think a couple years later, I built a couple semis for him after that. So to me, that some of that stuff came somewhat naturally. I'd call the main guys a lot because I'd have lots of questions around the carpentry stuff, but the managing, planning, just thinking ahead seemed to come naturally. And a lot of the guys the subs that we worked with were really easy to get along with, right? So they knew that I wasn't I didn't pretend. That was the thing. I didn't pretend to know everything. I knew I didn't, right? So I'd ask a lot of questions. I wasn't trying to tell the electrician what to do. But I'd ask questions to make sure that I understood what they were doing, so that we were all on the same page and I could explain it to the homeowners.
What were you subbing a lot of the work on that first job, or were you I know you went into this to be kind of belt on, hands on, you were green. What were you subbing out on that project?
Just the trades for the most part that we couldn't do in-house. So on that one, like obviously we didn't have the machinery to dig the hole. So you'd have your sub come in and do the excavation, but then we did the foundation because we did ICF. So we did all the forming for that, had it backfilled, we framed it up. I believe we actually insulated that because it was a smaller project, so it didn't make sense to bring in a sub. And we subbed out the drywall, and then obviously the electrical, plumbing, mechanical, we would have subbed out. We wouldn't have done that in-house, but then we would have did all the finishing. And then whoever built the cabinets installed the cabinets.
Nice. And what I'm thinking myself, a year into this, working for somebody, what was that like, kind of approaching a project like that, where you only have 1 year of experience? Because even with sub trades who understand your lack of experience, I feel like that would be a lot to bite off 1 year into it, just as far as experience, how that process is supposed to go, what the tolerances are for every job. To me, that's like, I feel like I would be throwing somebody to the wolves 1 year into it.
Yeah, I was probably closer to 2 years by the time I was doing it. So I had a little bit more experience. To some extent, yes. I think probably my upbringing it was a big mindset, right? So like I wasn't afraid. I was excited, right? I was like ready and willing to accept the challenge. So I wasn't stressed out about it. At the end of the day, I knew I had a good support team. My mindset seemed to be in the right place. Did I make mistakes? Yeah, like still make mistakes to this day, right? We're all human. We just make sure that we're not making the same mistakes over and over again. But I don't think you could do that with everyone. But I think a lot of times who you can do that with, right? You can point out they'll show the guys who show the initiative, which I did, and are willing to work a little bit harder and do that. They stand out, right? And I'm assuming that at that young age, I was doing that. I was showing initiative. I was working long hours. I didn't really care. I just wanted to learn and do more. And I liked the opportunity that they were giving me to grow and expand. And I liked the freedom to be able to run the job how I wanted. So that was exciting for me. And I didn't want to screw that up.
Did the customers know, that this was a bigger job for you and that you were slightly inexperienced, or was that kind of kept hush?
I don't know, because I don't know what the conversations were like before. I don't remember it coming up in conversations with them. Like they actually called me, I think about 10 years later when I was on my own, because the company I was working for wasn't getting back to them, or was too small for them at that point to do some other work. So not long after I'd gone on my own, they were calling to have me do work again for them. So we went in and did their basement and some other repairs. So I can't remember the exact conversation around that, actually.
Do you recall what your biggest takeaways were from that first project? Having so much control over a larger scale project at that point.
I remember the big mistake I made on that job. It wasn't a big mistake. So it turns out my takeaway was the ICF blocks. They're in this case, we're using a Dura. When I measured it, they were 12 and a half. Turns out though, when you stack 8 of them up, they're not quite 12 and a half. So when I did my math for where the foundation had to be in order for my addition floor to match the floor of the existing home, it was off by about an inch, if I remember correctly. So luckily I was too low.
Okay, that's good.
So my takeaway from that was, if you're going to do ICF like that, just put all the pieces together and take your measurement and mark it that way, as opposed to measuring it because you don't know if they're going to be squished or what's going to happen when you actually put them together.
Straight up, that's how I work in general.
Yeah.
I like to stack everything else up. And even when I was cutting rafters, I would you basically mock it all up just to make sure everything's the way I wanted it. Instead of, I watch a lot of these guys do it where they're just pre-cutting everything, and I'm amazed by it. The accuracy.
Yeah, I feel like the toughest part tying in an addition is if you're going, if you have more than one opening to that addition, or your existing house is not level, and then you're tying, it's an older house, and then you're tying in a new space that's level, or you're changing flooring out on the main space, and you don't know how far things are off, and your tile buildup winds up being more at the main space than into the existing addition. I feel like it can get a little bit funky, where it's like even planning and accounting for all that stuff. Sometimes you get the subfloor and you're like, I got to adjust for something.
Yeah, I would say that the floor being out of level is the biggest thing. Especially luckily this house was built pretty well, but yeah, you've done a lot of renovations where houses can be out by quite a few inches. I think we were out, the house that we're doing right now, that the last job I was running here was the floor was out 7 inches from one side to the other.
It's crazy. Or even tying in ceilings where like you're opening something up and you're supposed to have one ceiling plane going from the existing house to the new addition. It's like the existing house's ceiling plane is so out of whack.
Yeah.
It makes for a tough transition. All right. So after that job, you feel that job was pretty successful for you and for your company?
I would say so for running that job. The fact that they called me back 10 years later, obviously they were happy with the workmanship and how the project went.
So at that point, did you start kind of taking more of a management angle on things, or is that where your boss started kind of grooming you, or were you still hands-on at that point, kind of moving forward from that first bigger job?
Oh, I was always hands-on. So the one thing about working for that project is that we were always swinging the hammer. Just because we were running a job didn't mean we weren't doing carpentry work. We did a lot in-house ourselves. We would always do our own foundations. We would always do our own framing. We would always do our own finishing work, tile a lot of times, right? So we were doing a lot in-house. So there was the management side for sure, but it was management with carpentry.
So then how did you structure going from, a renovation, doing stuff in-house to building new homes? Would you sub out trades at that point that you typically wouldn't on a renovation?
So yeah, if we're talking now, my business that I currently run, it depends on the scale of the project and what else is going on. So the smaller project, like a smaller renovation, meaning, I don't know, you're doing an addition and there's a bunch of interior, maybe structural work to do in the existing house. A lot of times we'll do all that framing ourselves because it's hard to find a subcontractor that'll take on stuff like that, because a lot of times you have to figure it out as you're going. You don't really know what you're going to get into, or it's going to change likely, especially nowadays. We can talk about that later, and managing the current schedule with the current state of the world. However, when we get into bigger projects, it makes sense to sub out things like the framing because they have the equipment to do it more efficiently. It makes sense to sub out all the drywall and as much as we can, but we still are involved because there's a lot of stuff that maybe the framer won't include because of the types of buildings that we do in terms of high efficiency buildings. There's a lot of details that often get missed, or they're not sure what to do. So we'll keep that in-house and do it ourselves. A lot of the air sealing details, we'll do it ourselves. So we're still going to sub out the contractors that we can't legally do, don't necessarily want to do either, but the electrical, HVAC, plumbing, and insulation is not so fun. So we'll sub that out where we can.
Sure. I guess I'm looking at it from, not even what you are doing now, but I guess I could look at it internally, and it's like I choose to take on a certain size job, so I can either self-perform, and then when I get into a larger size project, even if it's something that's within our wheelhouse and we can't handle the manpower. So like this company that you were working for, and you handled a lot of the in-house work on renovations. But then I feel like once you go to new builds, if you're doing a renovation in a kitchen and you have a tile floor, a tile backsplash, or a bathroom, that tile is one thing. But then when you get to a full house worth of tile, it's a different story. Was that when you got to these builds where you were doing an entire house, would you sub out stuff that you wouldn't typically sub out just because of the volume of work?
Yeah, we would. So we would sub out the tile. We would sub out the flooring. But basically, I was doing what my boss, like he was the one doing the numbers at that point, right? He was building these to sell them. So it really depended on, based on what he was paying me, would it make sense? I'm sure he was running the numbers saying, okay, well, I can pay him to do it for this much, or I can bring in the sub to do it for this much,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know what his thinking was. But yeah, I remember on, the first two houses or the two semis that I'd built, we did sub out the flooring, we did sub out the tile, but I did the tile backsplash because that was done later. At that point, he was even starting to do some cabinets in house too. So he had a cabinet shop set up, and they were building cabinets and doing counters and stuff as well. So he obviously saw the value in doing as much as we could in house because it would save him money in this sense.
Sure.
But I don't know where his thinking was on that.
That he didn't have an actual like delineation between this is when we move in that direction versus when we self-perform. I feel like half the time it comes down to schedule too. And if you have guys on staff and you have to keep people busy, you can end up bumping people around to keep people busy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the way we think now too, right? If you got to keep guys busy, as long as it doesn't cost the client more, because the way we do our contracts, then we'll do it in-house, because we know that often we can do a better job on a lot of things as well.
Yeah.
And we don't have to manage trying to get somebody back to fix something if it were to happen, for example. But a big thing is, you're right, is schedule. Can we actually do it?
Yeah. So did you know early on working for this company? Because I feel like, you started early at 18, and then by 19 running jobs, and then by 25 or so, you started your own business. Did you know early on that you wanted to run your own business, or was there kind of a sequence of events that happened where you were just like, all right, this is the next logical move?
No, I always knew I wanted to run my own business. I remember when I actually went in for the interview with my boss on that one, I told him that I want to go off on my own. So that was right from day one. I think it came from my mom, because my mom she wasn't in construction, but she was a business owner, right? She was an entrepreneur. So in seeing that, I appreciated that for some reason. So I think it was just kind of built into me.
Yeah.
So whether it was construction or something else, I just enjoyed that business ownership, that entrepreneurial side of things.
So what did your business look like when you first started that? Was it just you? Was it you and somebody else? I know John started his business, and he kind of had enough wherewithal to kind of get everything lined up so that when he went off on his own, he could hit the ground running. And, he had somebody else doing that with him, where it wasn't just like, hey, I'm going to figure this out as I go. What did that look like when you kind of first started your own business?
I wish I was that planned. I definitely was not that planned. So the way it went for me is my boss at the time, he had a wicked temper, and he was pretty rough around the edges, and a lot of guys would quit, but he was always good to me in the grand scheme of things. So I don't have anything bad to say about him. But my tipping point was when he actually, on the job site, he actually like physically pushed me. And I can't remember what it was. I think I was just doing something that he didn't agree with, and I was saying, no, this is why I did it. And I was standing up on something apparently, and he was threatened by me because I was already taller than him anyways. And then he put whatever the reason was. So when that happened, I was just like, you know what, Tom, screw you, I'm out of here. And I just walked away before I did something stupid, right? And then I kind of walked to the front, and he kind of chased me, and I said, look, I'll give you 2 weeks. I'll finish. I was building another semi for him. I said, I'll get this to a good point in 2 weeks, and I'm out of here. And that night I wrote him an email, and said, and basically explained, thanked him for everything. But I said, look, I made my decision. Please don't ask me to stay. I don't want to stay. I'm happy to talk about this, and made sure we ended on good terms. And he respected that. He actually didn't ask me to stay, which was great. And he brought me out for lunch and we chatted about stuff. And I actually have not run into him since, which is kind of funny because Ottawa's a small city. But
so he's still building in that area.
He's doing more commercial stuff. So, and then that was me. So all of a sudden I was out on my own. I didn't have a plan. And it just happened that I think the following week, my girlfriend from like high school, I always did work for her aunt. And she just happened to call and say, hey, I'm doing this kitchen renovation. Can you help out? And I said, well, funny enough, yeah, I can. And then she ended up working with this higher end designer in the city. So we ended up doing a few projects for him. So it kind of built from there. And then the word kind of spread. And I was on my own at first, brought on a couple friends because I just needed a hand, and then realized eventually I needed skilled guys. So then I started reaching out to guys that I knew. They came on, they're all off on their own as well. And I just started to grow from there. But I had no plan. It was kind of fly on fly.
So I did something very similar, and that was my first business. And I was a good carpenter. I'll say that. I wasn't great. I was cheap, so everyone loved me. But what I didn't learn, like in school, I learned how to, deal with people and all that. And that was one of my strengths, but I didn't know how to price stuff. My old boss at the time would walk through, I've said this 100 times on the podcast, would walk through and go, that's like $285K. And he'd take me along because I love looking at houses. And I remember saying to myself back then, I'm never going to be able to be a GC because I didn't see $285K worth of work. So you have the carpentry stuff, you're getting the phone calls. Sorry, not stuff, but just you have the wherewithal and the knowledge to be with a carpenter mindset. What was your strategy towards the business end of it in the beginning? If you're looking back, like, did you get QuickBooks? Were you, did you have the aluminum, folding setup so you can do handwritten estimates? Like, what was the setup for you in the beginning for that end of it to start the back end of contracting?
So in the beginning, I did do the numbers properly. So I did get QuickBooks. Was not QuickBooks Online at that time. They didn't have that.
Yeah, buy direct.
Yeah. So we had QuickBooks Desktop. My mom actually helped me out, set up a lot of stuff, set up the books because, like I said, she had a business. So she showed me how to do that and set up some of the accounts. So I was doing all my own bookkeeping at first, but making sure I was staying on top of it. And there wasn't really much of a plan in terms of marketing or anything like that. It was just word of mouth, getting jobs, and it kind of just rolled from there.
But like your first contract, was there a contract? Was it a handshake?
Yeah, no, it's contract. So the big thing that really helped me was I joined the Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association, which is a part of Canadian Home Builders Association. And through them, at that time, they actually had a contract template. So I made sure to start getting things in writing, and I actually did get a written contract. And I remember signing the contract with my ex-girlfriend's aunt at the time. And she knew that I was a brand new, like kind of out. I was always doing side jobs for her, but she knew that this was a brand new business. She thought it kind of funny that we were signing a contract because she's like, really, you're a new business. So something were to happen. Yeah. What do I really have to go after, sort of thing. So she wasn't, but she was understanding and obviously did it all. And then obviously you build a reputation from there. But that was the biggest help is going to those guys that knew more than me at that time. Right. And that was kind of the old boys club at the Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association and attending those meetings and learning from them, because they're all, what I realized too, is that they are a competition, so to speak, right? I'm doing air quotes for those listening on the podcast, but they are a competition to some extent, but they're not really, because there's more than enough work for everybody. What I've realized is that it's the competition is the guys that are lowballing prices, that are kind of working under the table, that aren't doing things totally above table. That's the competition typically, right? In terms of pricing. But the guys that want to do a good job and do well, they all have enough work, right? So they're happy to help each other out and help out the next guy that's kind of up and coming. And that was me at the time. So they're more than willing to share advice and help out. And the association is there just for that, to help those businesses do a better job at being in business.
So they helped you with like insurance, liability, comp, and then, how to not just price it, but also how to collect payment. Like, is it like in Massachusetts, you can't ask more than 1/3 of a deposit, like little things like that can get you hung up when you don't realize what the actual process is. Like, do I take a deposit? Do I do it on, like, a lot of questions that we get is, do I do it on milestones or do I do it on percent complete? And these are things that can get, early on in your career can shape how you run your business. And then you're actually not running it the way you want to. You're running it the way this contract that you found online or someone gave you. And then it becomes your process and it's never what you start out of. So I just wonder how that was shaped for you. Was it also the building association?
Yeah, so our that's changed over time too. Like, obviously at first I went with what those guys were telling me, and then we've changed it as we've gone through and realize what worked and what didn't work, and when clients don't pay, what happens, and when subs don't do their job, what happens, that sort of thing. So we've changed our contract quite a few times, and even now we continuously tweak it and improve it as we learn more and more, because we're still learning every single day, every job that we do. But now, originally we were, a fixed price, but then change orders, I was not great at doing change orders. And then we did get better at those, but then they would bring on a whole new other world of problems to some extent, because a lot of clients just would keep changing their mind or their whatever it may be. But now what we do is cost plus, because we've realized, and it kind of saved us when COVID hit, because we didn't have the issues that with materials going up and us having a fixed price on a project, right? So materials went up, the client had to pay for it, and we just had to communicate that, and here's where it is. Some projects got delayed because of that, material prices going up, but we communicated that, and we just working with the homeowners to figure out when the next best time to start is. But now we've realized is that we're just completely transparent. So what I realized, a lot of people were asking us, they wanted us to show them information. Why did it cost so much? Why was it this? And at the end of the day, as a business, you can say, well, that's the price, right? And it would usually come up with change orders. So they give you a change order, or they want to do something, and you say it's going to cost $2,000. They're like, oh, why is it $2,000? I thought it'd be $500 or something like that. And so you have to show them the detail. You don't have to, but I would. So I'm like, well, what's the point of doing all this? I'm just going to keep everything an open book. And if people change their mind, we'll give them an estimate approximately what it's going to cost, and we'll just charge them what it actually is, and we'll track the budget. And that's what we're doing at this point, is completely open book. They get every single receipt for every screw purchase for their project. We give them an estimate, and then we build off of that.
So you, going back a little bit, you said that, clients that are indecisive on decision making, and it sounded like that's why you kind of push towards cost plus, which I know is not the case. But it's funny. I always hear that, and it happens to me. I look at it like they're not an undecisive. And correct me if I'm wrong, both of you guys. They're not an undecisive client. We're just not steering them the right way. That's how I take it. It's, that when you have a client that goes, oh, like right now I have one right now. And it's funny. It's always the ones that say, hey, I make great decisions. I do this, and I'm always ahead of the game, that struggle with making decisions. And it's not that I can't put enough time into our project. It's the fact that I'm a builder and I'm a construction manager. And if we want to put more time and more effort into design and all that stuff, then we need to either hire a designer or have a coordinator. And if you asked me that 10 years ago, I would never answer it that way. I would have dug deeper and to find more time in my day for a said client to help them through this decision process. But at no point in time would I have made more money or have been paid for that time, the opportunity cost that I could have been on a different job. That makes sense? So what is your take on that, in air quotes, the client that is indecisive? How do we handle them as a PM or an owner?
I would agree in the sense that we need to steer them in the right direction. But I also agree with the other thing you said, is that you're not getting paid for that design time. So we don't do design in-house. What we've gotten better at is we have a process, and we give the clients a list of stuff that we're going to need. So we recommend architects, designers. It depends on if they're working with somebody or not. But we give them a list of things decisions that we're going to need from them for us to be able to do our job. If they want us to get pricing for a few different options on something, that's what we'll do, right? We'll help manage, or if they need our input on constructability or which product would be better and why, like those are the things. But we're not going to design it and help them make those decisions when it comes to finishes. Whatever their exterior cladding is, whatever their anything you really see, all the makeup stuff. Where we help is really when it comes to the building science, so the wall assembly, the air tightness, the all of those details, the HVAC equipment, and so forth. Like that's like the envelope and the mechanicals is where we really help people, and that's easy to steer. But if people are changing on the fly their decisions around design, yes, maybe we're not steering them in the right direction, but the way we've set it up now is we need the designer to do that. We need the designer to make sure that they have the information. And we've also put it into the homeowner's hands where it's like, what information we need. If anything's unclear, and then we have regular meetings with them now to make sure that they're making those decisions. So I agree that I think there are some indecisive people because we have people flip-flopping, right? They'll tell us one thing and then they'll go back the other way and then they'll come back again. But there is also that some people just need to be told what's best, and some people listen to it. Some people don't listen to it though. Right. So it really depends on the individual.
Well, it's how do you find that line? Like exactly what you just said. And I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, I've dabbled in exterior design and interior design to give my client the whole package and manage the whole project. So how do you define that line that, yeah, you're going to help manage and create the details for your envelope and your passive house and all those details?
We won't create them.
But how are you helping manage that end of it? Like you just said you are. But yet you're going to draw the line and not do design. How do they know when you sign up and say I'm going to manage a project for them? And again, I'm saying that towards you because I want you to answer it for me, because these are things that I found looking back that, yeah, we're going to manage a project. So some clients think we're going to do more design. They're going to take advantage of that. And where do we find that line and how do you draw it in the sand per se? If you've already signed a contract and now there's still like a good sub. Oh, I shouldn't say good sub. A savvy sub will start setting tile the wrong way and put it on you to go, hey, well, take it out or just keep running with it. It's fine. Clients will kind of push you into a corner and try and not take advantage of, but try and maximize their value out of you.
Yeah, well, now we're just clear and we say we don't do those things, right? We're not going to do design. We're not going to do the drawings. We've never gotten the permits, right? So those aren't things that we do. We're clear on we're going to manage the construction of the project. We're going to manage the budget, but we're not going to choose materials for you. We need to, once you tell us what the material is, we'll go get it. Or if you need pricing on material to help make your decision, that's what we'll do. But we clearly tell them that we don't do design or anything to do with design. We like to be involved in the process because what usually happens is that the design is done beyond their budget. So we want to work through, and then we can work through constructability. If we know what their budget is and they start doing a design and we're involved and we see that the design is going to be way over their budget, we can let them know and we can tell them why, and then we can work with them to come up with some other options So what we push is for an integrated design process where you have us as the contractor, the homeowners, the architects, designer, engineer, whoever needs to be involved, and the energy advisor all at the same table working together right from the beginning. But we need to have all of those people involved because everybody can bring different opinions and thoughts to the project that are really important. Everybody has different strengths, right? I don't know, nor am I interested in really drawing or designing the house or choosing finishes. But I think by having me involved, I can help make sure that is done within the budget.
At what point do you prefer to be involved with that? Would you rather somebody, have all of that sorted out and then you comb through things once design's done? Or would you rather have a customer come to you and then you send them to an interior designer, you send them to an architect, you send them to whoever else on your team at that point?
I'd rather be involved right from the start, because what happens is exactly what I said before, is if they go out and get the design, then they go out and get pricing, they're just price shopping, right? They're trying to get the best price. But at the end of the day, usually they're not comparing apples to actually never. They're never comparing apples to apples. They're going to get a bunch of different prices, but chances are they don't have all the appropriate details in that set of plans to get a proper price. There's too many variables. There's too many details missing. So they end up getting a price from somebody, and maybe they go at the cheapest. They say they don't, but I think they often do, or somewhere in the middle. And then things end up costing more than what they expected because they didn't realize what was included and what wasn't included in that price, or maybe it wasn't clear. So what happens is that they often over-design, so they have to go with the lowest price in order to get what they want, or they think that they're going to get what they want, and then they only realize that they're not actually going to get it. So when we're involved in the beginning, if we know their budget and we know what their top priorities are, we can work with them and the architect to make sure that it's designed within the budget. I've never had a set of plans. It doesn't matter if their budget's $250,000, $1 million, or $2 million. Everybody designs over their budget, including myself for my own project, right? So if you've come across somebody like that, I'd love to talk to them and figure out how they did it. But it's usually we bite off more than we can chew. I think that's just human nature. So by having that team around you to help you keep things in check, then I think that's actually a better way to have a more successful project and get what you want within what you want to spend.
So are you looking to sign people up for a pre-con, or are you just good faith sending them to everyone else and then hoping they circle back?
Well, we do send people, like we recommend architects and designers because they're going to have their own contract. If they get the work, great. Hopefully they'll send them back to us, which they often do. Whether or not the client hires us is a different question. That's not up to the architect or the designer. But that's usually all we send to, right? And then if they want to get us involved, then they'll actually go to our contract, or maybe we'll do a deposit agreement if they don't want to go right to the contract right away. But because of how our contract's laid out, our contract doesn't lock them into a specific scope of work. It locks them into our fees. And then we need to figure out that budget together.
So would that would be a pre-construction agreement?
It's actually a construction agreement. We can go right to our construction agreement.
So you're locking them in for a job. I guess maybe dig into the construction agreement and how that's different than a pre-construction agreement. The way it looks to me is that basically you're signing them up, and then you're going to bring people, kind of your team, in-house and help them develop budget and everything else, which I guess maybe I'm confused as to what's the difference between pre-con at that point and a construction agreement.
They would already have their budget, right? I would ask them what their budget is in terms of what they want to spend, but then we would work with them to help with the architect to design within that budget.
So how do they trust you? I know people are going to hate that I just interrupted you, but I want to know.
How do you trust anybody?
Yeah, that's exactly it. But how do you, I want to go into, I feel like the first meeting I have with clients, I don't even talk about budget. I know it's against everyone's thing. I go into it I want to understand them. I want to know if I'm a right fit for them and vice versa. I know that numbers are important and I get there, but I want to get there on my own terms. And that also gains trust. I want to know what they're about, who they are, and all that. How do you do that part of it? Sidetrack.
The same way you do. Like I agree that you're not getting into the budget right away. You need to understand what they want and get to know them a little bit, and they need to get to know myself or our sales guy or whoever they're talking to, right, on our team. But it's the same thing. Nobody's going to sign anything, whether they've got a full price from us or not. If they don't trust us, they're not going to sign on with us. So it's a process. It's not like they call us and they sign that day. It's usually quite a few weeks of conversations and back and forth, and who knows what, depends on the person. Maybe they're looking at lots. Maybe they're trying to figure out what to do. We give them some tips. There's quite a few conversations that happen between when they first reach out to us to when they actually sign. So people do business with people that they, not only that they trust, but people that they like as well, right? You have to like them and you have to trust them in order to want to work with them.
Agreed. I think I'm glad you elaborated on that, because I think what Tyler's asking is that a lot of people right now during that honeymoon phase, let's say, a couple phone calls or even site meetings, why not sign them up right away? And I've had this debate, and I don't sign people up for pre-con. I've done it a few times. I've started the process just to throw it out there to see if they're serious. Meaning, like, I love it when a project comes to me with an architect attached or an interior designer attached, because they've already been vetted. They're going to drop, let's just throw it round numbers, $50K for an architect and another $50K for a designer. If they've already got them tied up that way, they're already signed up and they're already actively drawing stuff, and a civil engineer and for 11 grand, then I know this project's a real project. I'm not just someone's kicking the tires. I think that's what I use as kind of this like way of vetting it out, is going, hey, when they sound vague and ambiguous and all that, I'm like, hey, here's a pre-con agreement, sign up for 10 grand. I haven't signed one up yet, but I send it out just to see if they're serious. I guess why not do that if you're going to jump in again, asking that question, because I don't sign it up. Why wouldn't you sign that up just to get them hooked?
Well, the only time, to be honest, I haven't put a lot of thought into doing a pre-construction agreement, because the way we do our contracts, if they're serious, they can sign. Like, there's no reason for a pre-construction agreement. Like, we can just go right to the agreement if they really want to work with us. At that point, what we do though is, when somebody does have plans, often what I find is that a lot of them are price shopping, and we do have a score sheet, right? So we have a list of questions that we would just go through internally, and we would kind of score the person, and that would, based on what the score is, will be based on whether or not we believe they would be worth pursuing or putting the time and effort into getting the project. Because a lot of people will come out, they'll be vague, right? If they're vague and they don't really know what they want to do, or they're not really sure how much they want to spend, or they're not sure what their top priorities are, like, obviously they're not going to score very high. But people who, if they have plans, that's obviously, that gets them scored higher than somebody who doesn't have plans, because, like you said, that they're serious. So the only thing that we've done is, if somebody comes to us and they want to get pricing, we'll usually find out how serious they are and if they are price shopping, and then we'll give them a price. Be like, all right, we'll go put an estimate together for you, but it's $3,500 or $45, whatever it is. Usually they say no, right? Because then you realize that, to your point, they're not really that serious. They are just price shopping. Maybe they already had a price for somebody else and they just wanted to price check it to make sure that it was the right one. So once again, I think we've had one person sign up for that, maybe. Yeah, I think it was one person. They did say yes to it, but they didn't pay in advance. We did the price and then realized that we didn't want to work for them, so we just backed out of it. I didn't even ask for the payment.
It's so true, because I don't think it's, for me, like, people are like, oh, I want to get paid. I want to get paid for my time. I think a lot of contractors, Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, that's why they're entering into that. Because again, I totally appreciate and understand is that, yeah, I don't want to go down this road and then waste 4 months when I could have been actually actively with somebody that's a great client for 4 months.
I also think that people want to lock up jobs, but at that, locking the job up at that pre-con stage, and you've kind of planted this seed in my head, John, where people are locking up jobs at pre-con, and they're going to be part of this design process, and they're going to help establish a budget with the designers. And it's like, no, you're not. Like, what are you doing to help establish a budget with the architect? Telling them how many square feet they can build? Like, that budgeting is not developed on our end. We can price something that the designers, the architects, the engineers, the interior designers are speccing, but we don't have our hand in that process enough to be like, no, we can't do that here. Let's do this. You can do that during the job, but like, the whole point of pre-con would be to pre-build a project, right? Yeah. So that you have all those decisions made. You have a ceiling number where, like, it does seem counterintuitive to do pre-con with a cost plus job, because if you're kind of designing something that may change anyway, and your job on a cost plus, and if you're doing a successful job managing that job, is to keep schedule and maintain budget as you go, right? So you have this this bare bones design in place, and then you figure out those details and you maintain schedule and you manage budget throughout the course of that project. And with the proper experience, I don't know if pre-con's really going to help all of that.
I mean, I get it. If there's a lot of detail in the drawings and you've entered into pre-con, every time I've done it, I've been more looking at it like at the obvious things when they're trying to add a fifth fireplace to a product. And I'm like, let's just ballpark it and go, it's 18 to 28,000, depending on what material you're using, times it by 5 people. I'm just the guy literally on the Zoom doing this, raising my hand going, are we sure we want to add a fifth one and it's in the kitchen? I don't think it's necessary. And it's stuff like that. But most of the time I want to be involved in design going, like, fundamentally, is this generically going to be hard to build? You know, like when a client's like, I want this, like I was at a client meeting today, not getting paid, not doing any of that. And they're like, yo, we have this design. Do you think it's smart that we're walking from the front door all the way through? They asked me if they're giving it all away, that you walk in, you see through the glass doors, through the courtyard to the pool. And I'm like, 100%, it's going to pull you. That view is going to pull you through the house and want you to go out back. I want to be there for that. I don't want to be there going, that's going to cost a fortune. Who wants to be there for that part of the meeting? I don't want to be that representative. It's Tyler, we talked about it where people go, they're putting an ad in a magazine or on Google and they're like, yeah, we're on time and we're on budget. I want to be the one that's super creative and we're going to give it to you for the best value we can find through our role of artisans that we've captured over the years. That's how I want to capture that. But pre-con is really tough for me. And I think it is a lot of waste of time if you're going to start bill for it, because I have a problem with investing a ton of time into something I know is going to change.
Especially on a cost plus job, a lot of times it's because you don't have the details sorted out and because you're building to a high level. And the challenge in that is managing that budget as you go, not beforehand, because beforehand, you don't know what's going to happen once they start building and what they're actually going to choose and what they're selecting. On a larger project, to have detailed plans that are that comprehensive that you can put a number on that, it's like, why not just hard bid that at that point, and then they can send it out. You spent that much time up front and you're dead set on it. It doesn't make sense. Like the pre-con with cost plus, a lot of times is confusing to me, because I think a lot of guys and girls are using that to lock in a job, and then they're not hitting budget, they're not controlling budget, they're not controlling design, and then they're just like, all right, well, we just spent however much time working through this with you, we're X amount over budget, but this is really what you want, let's move ahead with things.
Because you've now made it where you don't want them to go, well, I wasted the last 4 months.
Exactly.
And I invested 10 grand on you and my architect and my interior designer to be at these meetings. So now I'm going to let that dictate the next 25 years of living in a custom home or renovation that I'm doing. I think, Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to do a high level budget. I want to know what you're going to do here. I do a high level budget that's going to give me kind of a generic cost for said square footage at a guaranteed execution level. So like, hey, on the last house, we were running, I hate doing square footages, but it's the easiest way to know that we're in the running and we're all on the same page. If we're off by 20%, then we got an issue. We should downsize it. We should scale back details, but not knowing what tile is going to be. And I actually watched one of the YouTubes and you said, with COVID, we're trying to get as many selections done ahead of time. And I'd like to know how that works. Depending on, I understand its scale, depending on the scale of the project, but what are you doing to give them a bird's eye view early on without having to run it by all your subs? Because like you said, it's hard to get a hold of subs and get them on your job site. It's even harder, in my opinion, to get them to dial in, sit down, and actually get quoting done for you that's accurate.
Yeah, initially we're just doing exactly what you said. It's just that high level, right? To make sure we're in the right ballpark for what they want to build. So that's kind of the first step, is you get us these certain details so that we know what the constructability is going to be like, because some designs are going to cost more. to me, it's not the finishes that are going to blow the budget. It's the overall design of the home that is gonna blow the budget, and potentially like their window and door selections because of the types of homes that we build. You can spend 50 grand on windows and doors, or you can spend 200 grand on windows and doors. Also the site work, right? So it's exactly that, in the sense that we're giving them that high level, make sure we're in the right ballpark, and then continuing forward. If they're going to be too above what they want to pay, then we have to have that conversation too about what could bring those costs down. A lot of times people come to us and they're all excited and they want to build passive house, but then they also want this crazy design that's going to cost, it's going to cost more anyways. Passive house certification or not, it's expensive to build a custom home. And I think a lot of my conversations at the beginning is people don't really understand where the costs go until you give them some sort of breakdown. So once you have that initial breakdown, then they see that, oh, okay, I see why it's so expensive now. It's not just, there's a lot of categories. You guys know, right? There's a lot of things where the numbers add up really quickly, especially if you're on like we're building on the outskirts of the city. So it's a bigger lot. And you got septics and well, and 100 feet of driveway and all sorts of stuff. People start to realize that stuff actually costs quite a bit. So it's a fine line. Like, unfortunately, you mentioned that, you didn't want to be your hand putting it up saying, hey, this is going to cost too much. You want to be on the creative side. To some extent, it has to be done, right? Because it's a lot harder if you get further down the road and then you say, yeah, this is going to cost too much. And they're like, oh, well, we can't build this now. And it's like, well, we talked about that before.
But I think it's like, if you were to knuckle it down to a couple of things, like when they sit down with you and they go, after you got to know them, and they say their budget's X amount of dollars, let's say it's $1 million to build a house. Right now, you know exactly what it's going to cost and what you have to put into that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I'm going, all right, I can't splurge on hardwood flooring. Trim package is going to be this much. That window package should be, if I'm going to hit that budget, it's going to have to be in the $40,000 range. You get me? Yeah. And just kind of food for thought. Like, I know my kitchen can't be extravagant, meaning it can have the usual suspects, sub and wolf, but I'm probably going to have a limited mudroom size, nothing extravagant, laundry, and probably a small pantry. But as soon as those drawings come back to me, and it's got a walk-in pantry that's probably the size of my, laundry room right now, then I know I can raise my hand. I'm just, for everyone listening that goes, all right, so you've talked about pre-con, how to do it, how not to do it, how to ballpark, and now we don't know what we're doing, and it's a clusterfuck. It's like, all right, no, it's simple. If you come back to me and the whole back of the house is windows, boom, I get to raise my hand and go, I'm going to send this out for pricing. I don't need to send the whole thing out. I need to send this out. Let's say it goes from a beautiful farmhouse, it's a very simple A-frame, and they come back and it's a gambrel. Boom, I get to raise my hand and go, that's more complicated. It's going to take longer and it's going to cost more material. I can trust it, but usually I can't trust the whole thing. So the side skirts of that, gambrel have to be stick frame to the LVL, and then the top of it could be trusses, but you're not going to gain anything there for value. So it's like, how do I go about this where I can always stay at 1,000-foot view, but know that there's a few things that are going to change? And obviously you write in there and go, hey, my ballpark, I'm going to start you at 4-inch hardwood floors. 4 inches, great. It's not 2 1/4. It's not your, super standard, but it's going to be something that's semi-custom. And if they go, hey, I want 10-inch hardwood floors, then I know that this is a change. But that's not something that needs to be done at pre-con, in my opinion.
No, I don't think so either. I guess for me, the question would be how, and I know how I would, and I have an idea as to how John would, but Casey, how are you getting your customers to sign up for a work contract without having design and true budgeting in place? What's that look like on your end?
Not everybody does that. The ones who do, it's usually, if we'll talk budget and I'll have a good idea of what they want to build, or it's a renovation. And if it sounds reasonable for what they want, then we say, yeah, this is what we think it can include, right? If you're going to build, like you said, if your budget's $1 million and you want to build yourself a 2,000 square foot home on this 2-acre lot, and yada, yada, whatever, all those details. And I'm like, you know what? Yes, I believe that's possible with these specs, right? So it's the windows that are going to be, maybe it's an IKEA kitchen, for example, or it could be a mid-range custom, right? So we kind of have those details in it. And then we put that into just a scope, like a schedule as part of the contract with our fees in it. So the idea is that we're going to build 2,000 square foot home with a budget of $1 million and fit as many of these priorities into that plan as possible. And then it comes down to the trust, right? But that we can't, at the end of the day, we can't give them a price until we have a set of plans. So now it's like, if you really want to build this, we can book you into our schedule and start working with you, but we need to have a contract signed in order to move ahead. But at that point, we would have had a lot of conversations about this. They probably came from a referral. They're probably working with an architect that we would have recommended. So there's a lot of factors at play there.
So is there an opt-out for you or for your customers in your contract? You know, say you go through with this process and it was a nightmare, it's just not going to work out. Is there a way for either of you guys to kind of back out?
Not once you're far into it. I guess you could come to an agreement, right? Anybody could back out and you can do a separate agreement to get out of anything, right? So there's always a way to do that. But normally we know at this point, we've had enough conversations to know whether or not we want to work with the person, right? So it's not like we just met, they signed a contract and we're good to go. It's been weeks or months of conversations, and now we're actually getting into an actual design process with them and their architect.
And how much design do you need done, you know, on a cost plus job? How much design do you expect or need done to be able to kind of firm up a budget and then be comfortable managing that schedule and that budget without having all the details?
Well, we have a list of things that we can do, like a high level budget for them. That would be, off the top of my head, I'm not going to remember everything, but if we kind of have a rough grading plan, if we have the basic floor plans with some elevations, so we need some measurements and we need some elevations as to how the home's going to be built. We don't necessarily need engineering details at that point. We need to have an idea of what they're expecting for finishes, right? Windows, doors, the kitchens, the floors, like if they have an idea of what they'd like for some of those things, so that we can make sure we include the appropriate allowances. And anything else that they, like if there's any wraparound decks or exterior work that they want us to take care of that's outside of the square footage, we would need to know about that. And then we can do rough numbers based on previous projects, based on square footage. At that point, they usually don't have the electrical plan. We know how many bathrooms and stuff that they have, right? So we can do our plumbing. That's fine. There's usually a lot of conversations around HVAC for our projects. We need to know if they wanted to hit a certain level of performance, like R2000, net zero, pass, whatever that is in their mind. So we need to, so that we can account for that in the envelope as well. That would be it.
Yeah. I guess, and I kind of work the same way where my projects, the scale of my projects are smaller, but essentially I think it comes down to trust, right? And I basically expect my customers to hire me prior to having a design and prior to developing high level budgeting, right? Where it's like, I remain a scale where I want people to come to me because they want me to do the work, and whether that's through a referral or, you know, kind of guaranteeing a level of execution and cleanliness and quality that I know most people don't, they don't have the, either the setup or the patience to hit. So a lot of times I don't want to price jobs out, not for the sake of being concerned about my price or wasting time, just that I want my customers to come hire me for me and not because that's just what they want. And I think that it does come down to trust, because a lot of times I'm signing up customers, and whether you want to call it a pre-con or a construction agreement or whatever, basically I'm asking customers to get in bed with me prior to really having anything on paper. And then we are going to help them through that process. But I'm able to control a lot of that design process and the finishes to maintain budget, or, I'm small enough to be able to articulate how each decision is going to impact budget and whether that's bringing in design professionals or not. But at the end of the day, it does come down to trust. My customers are hiring me because they trust me or because they trust somebody else's experience with us. And it's not necessarily about the pre-construction agreement, or getting them this high level budget without getting paid for my time. It's just understanding that I want to work for them and they want to work with me, and that's how we end up doing it on our jobs. And I found that that's easiest for me to do on a job where I can control a lot of that. On a larger job, that's tough. If you're looking at a job like John's running and it's cost plus and you don't have a full design set, you have more of like a permit set. That's where you need the experience to be able to build that job, maintain that budget without having all of those details sorted out beforehand. And I don't necessarily think that you need to have all of those details sorted out beforehand.
Agreed. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know why my video is not coming back.
Oh yeah, you're frozen.
Yeah. Is it frozen? All right. I keep trying to click it and it won't. But no, I agree with you, Tyler. It's just a fine line. You have to be thoughtful about putting a reasonable budget in that, where I think a lot of people in the industry will put a low budget in there just to make it happen. And then they're comfortable having that shitty conversation later on in the relationship.
Yeah, and I think that so many people right now everyone's busy and everyone's using this whole pre-construction agreement to lock in customers. And I want to get rid of the tire kickers, and they're agreeing to a budget that, they may not be able to hit, and they may understand that they're not going to be able to hit that. But then, they sign up somebody who they can't start design on their job for 6 months, and then they begin design. That's a 6-month process, and then they're going to start 6 months for theirs. So these people at this point, at 12 months in, realize that they're way over budget. But what are they going to throw that out of the window? They're going to say, all right, well, we can either reduce scope, or we can just go with this. At this point, we already spent 12 months right now invested in this with this contractor. We don't want to lose the time, and we don't want to lose the money that we just spent. And it's like, if you should have just been upfront and honest with them from the get-go. And I don't think that it's necessarily the best approach for every job and every customer. And I think that people are using it kind of to their advantage, where if you have the experience and you have the systems and you understand how to manage a job, you don't necessarily need all of that in place beforehand to be able to maintain that budget.
I agree.
I think that just comes down to a lot of that is experience with managing jobs and all of that. So, Casey, you said you have a YouTube channel?
We do.
Is that something new?
No, we've been doing that about 4 years now, but we've really started to amp it up since COVID hit in terms of actually getting more serious with that. So that's the Conscious Builder. And we had our first YouTube series, or it's being released. We're doing one episode every 2 weeks. So third episode was just released. But on that note, that's another way that we gain trust, is through that, right? When people see that we're all over the internet, that's one way to gain trust. There's a bunch of different ways that you can gain trust, right? Through referrals, through conversations, through delivering something that they didn't ask for. But I think doing something like that, where you can prove to people that you are out to better the industry as a whole, or whatever it may be, if you're showing them that you've been around for a while and you plan on sticking around, that's another way to gain trust that will actually help people close the job as well. I'm sure it helps you with your podcast, right? It's another resource for you to use.
Yeah, I think so. And you're investing the time, and it ends up educating customers and consumers as to what you're doing and what you kind of speak to and what you're about. do you, what is kind of the focus of your YouTube channel? Is it like, is it I know a lot of people have them. Some are kind of walkthroughs, tutorials, more educational as far as systems. Some are more of a hands-on approach. I know you said that you had the tool belt on for a bunch of YouTube videos. So what did they kind of look like?
Ours is definitely on the education side, but educating people on how to build better when it comes to the performance of a home, the comfort, the health, the efficiency of homes, and understanding building science. A lot of stuff in there for business as well. It's really geared, the way we're gearing it now is towards the builders, the younger guys who want to do good work, who know that they don't know everything, who understand that they need, there's some mistakes that they can avoid if they learn for the right people, sort of thing. So ultimately, we're looking to improve the residential building world. And I think the best way that we can do that is by helping other contractors build better and teaching them what we're learning along the way as we build our homes.
And this is all on your projects that you're filming content for it?
Yes, it is.
And how are you developing kind of how are you generating ideas for this? Is it just kind of as you have a project organically going along that you're like, hey, we could film this content and put this content out? Or are you kind of looking to shape projects to create certain content?
Well, we're doing them based on the projects that we're doing. We're not really shaping the project for the show. So the YouTube's working with what we already have for projects. Now, when it comes, at least for when it comes to content on the site, when it comes to answering questions or just talking about building science in general, that could be anything. That could just be me speaking. That could be us showing something that we've done in the past or a wall assembly that we've done, right? So it's not all just the current projects. It's also questions that might come up through our social media or people ask, or that just come up from clients, right? That we think would be a great question to put on the show.
I always, I know Nick has his YouTube channel that he invests a lot of time into, and it seems like a full-time job. And he does have Doug on full-time staff. You know, he has basically like a media side company to do that. How are you kind of affording yourself the time to step away and do that with everything that it's going on, you know, running a business in general?
Well, that's where the team comes in. So we do have a media side as well that we've actually just this past week became more clear on the direction that we're heading. So we're changing that. The way we're going to be running that is more, there's the construction, instead of the construction and media together, we're actually separating them, where we're going to be doing, this is what we need to do. Here's our goals for the media side. This is what we need to do. And here's our goals for the construction side. So they are separate to some extent, but they feed into each other. But we're going to be running them as like two separate divisions.
And how many people do you have working for you or with you right now?
What are we at? I think we're up to 15 or 16 now.
Damn. And how many did you have, you know, when COVID hit? You said that you basically put the belt back on and kind of had to slim down a little bit.
Yeah, we didn't have, we were having trouble finding guys to help. We had some work, but we didn't have enough manpower. Some work did slow down. So we did, I think recently we've brought on 3. So I think we still had about 11 or 12. I'm trying to remember who was with us at that point. It's gone by so quick, the last year and a half.
I know it's been crazy. So what is your, I know you just said that you look to kind of develop some goals for this media side of things. What are your goals for that? Obviously there's a financial impact of that, but like what are the goals with running that? Because I always look at it where it's like, you could run one, you could run the other. If you're kind of splitting your time, nothing's going to get 100% of you. So what are you looking at to kind of take off and have a life of its own where, you know, they obviously overlap, but what are your goals for that?
Did Tyler pause for you?
Yeah.
He's back.
Sorry.
He's back.
So you know, I'm not sure where I cut off, but basically, where you have like 2 businesses now and you kind of have a foot in each, and it's tough to give everything 100%. I know you just said that you've recently sat down and you're kind of pushing this media side of the company, and you develop goals for that. What do those goals look like?
So first, I guess in terms of answering one of your questions with splitting my time. So I do have a team, and we kind of have a management team, right? So on the media side, we have a marketing manager, but she's running all the media stuff. So let's call it media manager. On the construction side, we do have a project manager who's managing a lot of that. So it gives me the opportunity to work on the business, right? Which is on both sides, right? But for the most part, it kind of combines the two, with exception to, if I'm checking on the job site, that's construction stuff. If I'm recording, that's media stuff. But ultimately, I'm working on the business. So in terms of our goals and where the media side is going, and I have a partner as well, like our COO, who's my brother as well. And he helps me with the operations. He's an engineer by trade, so that's a huge asset. I'm more of the visionary. I'm always, the bull in the china shop. Let's just do it. He's more like, how do we make it better? Let's stand back and analyze this. So
that's for the building company, not the media side.
No, that's for both. So we're still looking at the same company. We have two divisions, but it's still one business, right? So like we're still managing that side of it together. But then we have our leaders in each one of those categories. Now, in terms of what our goals are, like ultimately we're launching the Conscious Builder Academy. We've already launched it, but we're going to be creating some more courses for it. So our goal is to get that up to 1,000 users, paid users of doing that as we start to launch it now. We're going to have little goals along the way, like getting to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, getting to 10,000 on Instagram and so forth, right? So then we'll be launching more and more. But ultimately, we're looking to get to 1,000 subscribers, users on the Conscious Builder Academy over the next year.
What is that Conscious Builder Academy?
So that's going to be it's going to be online courses. That's what we're starting with. So we already have a free course there. So the 5 things I wish I knew before I started my business. And then we do have the first paid course, which is increasing profits, bottom line. And I'm going to be working on other things such as the mindset and team management. We've had people ask for client management stuff as well, like how to manage client expectations. That's been coming up because of COVID and all the changes that we have to continuously manage on site. But ultimately, it's going to be built for contractors who want to bring their business to the next level, mostly directed towards smaller contractors. You might maybe have 3 or 4 employees who are growing, right? And they're having these growing pains. So I've been there, I've done that, and we want to help them get a hold of some of the problems that we know that they're going through because we've been through them, and get better and hopefully avoid a lot of the pain that we had to go through and continue to grow their business to whatever they want to grow to. We all have our different goals for our businesses.
So have you sorted out how that's going to work? Is that going to be like an initial registration or a 12-month membership and then you pay per course, or
right now it's paid per course? That's because we already have it launched, right? So it's just that the 2 courses up right now. But once we get more courses, then we'll likely do a membership as we get to it. We'll likely do weekly as we have more users. We'll likely offer a monthly group call. We'll offer some coaching. We're not sure how that's going to evolve yet, but those are all ideas in the pipeline right now.
That's crazy. That's so much work. I'm like thinking in my head. I mean, I don't know if John is. I'm working with MT Copeland right now, developing some like online courses for them that, we're going to travel out and record, 5 days worth of content, and just the amount of legwork, to get all the product in order, all of the tools that we need, develop an outline for the courses and coordination, and then getting the set up, and then the production of that. It's like a full-time job in and of itself.
Yeah, if you're doing the types of courses that you're doing, like if you're training people how to use tool, whatever those courses are in terms of needing a set, that's more work than I think some of the stuff that we're doing. There may be online stuff, but we don't need like a set up with tools and materials and so forth. At least not yet. down the road, we'd like to bring in other people to start teaching as well.
Yeah.
It's really going to be directed like more towards like healthy, efficient, comfortable homes. So a lot of building science stuff people are asking for. So we'll be getting into that as well. And there's a lot of guys out there that know way more than me that I learned from on that front. So I'm hoping to get some of those guys on there as well.
John, are you still there?
I'm here, baby. Want me to pause it and see if I can get my video back?
Nah, I mean, it doesn't matter. I just like see your face in the same position. I'm like, I wonder if he's still there.
I'm still here.
So how, as far as building science, so what comes to mind, I'm like, building science, we're going to create content revolving around building science. And what comes to mind is Matt Reisinger and like everything that he pumps out right now. For better or for worse, what are you looking kind of something similar, something different, hit a different market? I kind of been touching this with broader strokes because I understand the aspect of his business and why he's doing it. And I'm curious as to see what yours would be like as far as, the structure of that and how that goes, because on Matt's end, that's like a money-making monster. And I think that, a lot of what's going on has gotten away from the building science and everything else as much as just product placement and pumping out as much stuff as possible with as many vendors and sponsors as possible.
Yeah, I can't say I've watched a lot of his videos. I know who he is. I've seen some of his videos. I also know that he's building in Texas, if I'm not mistaken. So the climate's very different than where we are at. So yeah, I know, like, obviously it gets to a point as a business. One of the reasons why I'm pushing the media side is because there is way more potential there than on the construction side, right? There is a lot more that, and what I see is that can then feed a lot of the construction side. Then we can do some of our own projects. Then maybe we can develop or buy some land and, build a few of our own houses to the way that we want to build them, as opposed to whatever the way the clients want to build it. So that's what excites me, is the potential and where it can go and the opportunities that it can present and the doors that it can open for us as a business. That's the exciting part about it, for sure.
So hold on. I know you can't see me, but do you think that has to happen through the media end, or can it just happen through the evolution of your clientele and your business?
I believe that probably the faster way would be through the media end, right? If you're out there getting in front of more people and making it look like you're everywhere. I've done a lot of personal development stuff, and actually I was at a business mastery with Tony Robbins before all lockdown, and they were talking about how you need to be a media company first, and then whatever your business is second, sort of thing.
That scares the shit out of me.
They were big on that,
because the phrase you just used is make it look like you're everywhere. I don't want to look like I'm everywhere. I want to look like I know what the hell I'm doing right with the clientele I have. Yeah, that's where this whole media and social and all that kind of hang me up. Is that right now my main focus is running a business, and I don't want to be building a media persona but on my client's dime. You get me? So yeah, if I want to educate, then I have to do that after hours. And if I want to educate on a certain thing, that's my hardest thing I have right now, is that am I going to walk them through my client's house on my client's dime and spend time doing video? And right now my stuff doesn't run super smooth. I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of my stuff is headaches and hiccups and flaws that can be solved and smoothed over by putting more time into the project. So I don't have time for social media. And so how do you balance that end of it? I know we just asked two questions, but how do you balance that end of it where clients come first before media, in my opinion? How do you balance that?
Well, that's where the team comes in, right? So if you're running a business, you need to focus on the business. The clients are a part of that, but you need a team to be able to serve your clients. If you're still focused on the clients yourself, then in my opinion, you're working in the business, not on the business. So my goal and what I think is best for our clients, for the people who work for us and for the industry as a whole is the more I can work on the business, the bigger impact we can have and the more people we can serve. If I'm focused on working in the business, then yeah, sure, some things will go better and there won't be as many hiccups, but we're not going to be able to have as big of an impact as we could have. And the opportunities for myself and for the team won't be as big either. So I think there's two different things, right? So I'm big on being able to find the right people and trust them to do the job that you've hired them to do. And obviously you need to work with them and manage that aspect of it as well. But I don't think you can just completely get rid of it. If you're going to run a business, you have to think of everything that's involved in a business, and media or marketing, whatever you want to call it, is just part of that business.
So you putting on a tool belt you would describe it as being in your business, correct?
Correct.
That was because to put on a show for YouTube. Correct.
So that one, that one would have been a good test of working on the business, but it also was working in the business for that in that case. The one that I was just doing that we didn't necessarily do a show for that I'm finishing up now is definitely working in the business, like putting the tool pouch on and swinging a hammer. There wasn't like a YouTube show. The other one we had sponsors for, like we made money off sponsorships for that project. Not a whole lot. It was our first kick at the can for it.
So, yeah, good for you. I haven't done that yet. But how do you figure out? So when you got started in this business as a carpenter and you wanted to kind of move into management, now you want to set all the ducks in a row so that way your business is successful. How do you describe success in your business?
Well, I'll go back to the word management. I'm not a great manager. I've realized that. So I'm definitely an artist. So at that Business Mastery, I'll just go based on that because I already mentioned it. It says there's actually 3 people. And they mentioned Matt Reisinger at that meeting, by the way, because of how good he does on YouTube. There's managers, there is artists, and there are entrepreneurs. So the entrepreneurs are all about money, making money. They'll do whatever. It doesn't matter what the business is. They're focused on making money. The artist is usually somebody like all of us. We're all good at our craft. We like that part of it, and we get to create something. Those are the artists. Most people who start businesses are artists, and they are trying to become entrepreneurial. And then the manager are the people who can really manage people, manage projects, are really enjoy systems, processes, making them better. Those are managers. I'm definitely not a manager. I'm definitely an artist who's become entrepreneurial. To me, the media side is just another way to express that artistry. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I'm trying to figure out how you say all this, where I fall into this. But I guess my point is, I've done it both ways. I've built a business and I was a carpenter and I enjoyed being the artist more. Filled my pockets with sawdust, and I had to then learn the management end of it. Took me a couple more years, 10, whatever, to kind of do that. And then we grow. Okay. So now you start a business and you start growing and you put people in place, and then the projects start growing because your expertise in your kind of hungry for all the details. And then you grow a little bit more, basically taking on more responsibility for these builds. Maybe explain to me how I want to still be in the nitty gritty of every day because clients hire me. My business revolves around me and Ben and his projects. How do I build a boutique firm that I'm in the mix every single day? I'm ordering windows. I'm figuring out details with the architect. I'm trying to stay the artisan and run my business, but not be labeled with the class you took. And now I'm being labeled as one of those 3 people. Maybe I'm not that. 10 years ago, you would have called these people that are running around trying to do multiple businesses. They would be labeled as ADT and they can't finish one thing before they start another. And they'd be labeled this way in a negative way. And now it's a way of making money and being looked at in a different point of view. And they're like, oh no, you're very successful because you got a lot of things going on. Like you just said earlier, is being in a lot of places. So why can't I just be doing what I'm doing in being in my business and being a pulse of my business without being categorized as someone that's stuck in his business?
Well, you can. It doesn't have to mean that you're stuck. If that's what you like doing and you don't feel stuck, then carry on, in my opinion. It's for the people who want to get out. So do you feel like,
But who, like, so why do you have to get out is my question.
You don't have to if you don't want to. It depends on what your goals for your business are. What are your goals for your business?
This whole thing just keep changing. Like now everyone says design build. And everyone thinks it's because you design it, then you build it, and it's done in-house. That was never the term. The term was design build was that you're designing it while you're building it. And as you go, you might have the infrastructure done for foundation, and you're putting the foundation while you're designing the upper floors. That's like completely lost now. And it's the same thing as this, is that being a builder and being an entrepreneur, maybe I just want to be a builder. Maybe I want to be this type of artist that keeps adjusting in these certain things and not have to, like, would you wait 10 years to be the top of the food chain in your area? Or would you think it has to be driven through media? Would you rather do it in 2 years to be at the top of the food chain, or would you rather wait 10 years and just get there by osmosis?
Well, it takes long to do anything, right? I'm only 11 years in, right? So I think it depends on what the goals are. If you just want to stick, you can be super successful. If we just did construction, that's fine. We can do really well. I can get rid of the YouTube stuff. I can get rid of everything that we do and just focus on the construction. You still have to put some time into marketing, whatever that looks like. But if we didn't do any of the media stuff, we would still be a good construction company. For myself, that's not what I would be happy doing, is just doing that for the next 30 years or however long I want to do it.
And has that changed since the day you started with your vision of the company, or your vision of being in this industry?
I would say yes, because when I started my business at 25, I didn't really have much of a vision, right? So when you're 25 and when you start a job or start something, it's typically, well, my thinking was, hey, I just want to run my own jobs and grow my own business and make some good money. Like that was my thinking at the time. It wasn't the conscious builder, right? It wasn't sustainable building. It wasn't any of that stuff. None of that. I hadn't been introduced to any of that yet. As I started to go through continue to grow, then I realized what I started to become more interested in and what was pulling me towards it as opposed to me pushing towards something. And where, for example, the conscious builder started to come into picture was when my wife and I found out that we were pregnant. And then all of a sudden, I started thinking differently because I was going to have this little person looking up to me. And if I was going to tell this person that he or she, at the time I didn't know, it's a little boy. So if I was going to tell this person that he can be and do anything that he wants, I have to live up to that expectation. And then I also need to lead by example, because I don't know, do either of you guys have kids?
Yeah. I have 2 girls.
Yeah.
2 boys, 14 and 10.
Yeah. So you're more experienced than I am. My little guy just turned 8, but you've probably realized that kids don't do what we say, they do what we do. Right. So we need to continue to lead by example. And if I'm going to do that, I need to do that. So I started thinking differently. I started saying, okay, if I'm going to leave this place better than when I came here, what can I do to do that? So what is my gift? How can I give back as much as I possibly can? How can I use my skills and expertise and passion and desires to ultimately help as many people as possible?
No, I love that. I mean, that's the same reason why we started this podcast. It wasn't to, I guess this is where it gets convoluted. Okay. I wish you could see me. Because I know how I come across.
You have a really good expression on this still, though.
Well, I guess that's the convoluted part of it, is that's the story I would love for you to lead with, is not to be seen in more areas and more places than what you actually are, is you're giving back to something that's giving you so much. That's the story I want my kids to hear. That's the story I hope that you want to give to your kids, is that you're, I guess that's why I asked you what describes, or what's your opinion of success? Like if I could take 3 clients and give them everything they've ever wanted in that build, and I make enough money to sustain my lifestyle, and my company is surviving. I say surviving because it's paying the bills, it's getting stuff done, and we're making margin. But success for you is beyond that, since you've had your child, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think success probably changes throughout the years for people as well.
Agreed. Yeah, it evolves. So I guess I'm still stuck on, I want to just build stuff the same way I was when I was a carpenter year one, is that I wanted to learn more and build more. And I want to do that. And I'm going to try and do some social media in between and give back, whether it's doing a class at JLC Live on management and technique and understanding clients, and managing regret, and not just managing projects. That way more people have that information. But I'm not doing that so I gain more trust with my clients or potential clients. That makes sense?
Yeah. And
So
I don't see why there's anything wrong with that. Like,
I'm just trying to understand the overall storyline has to be continuous and correct. It can't be broken up and flip flop back and forth, because then it can be that story we say for our kids is, if my kids look at me and they look at what I'm doing, that they'll never look at my bank account. You get me? I want them to look at the success of how happy I am with them, how cool the products are, and how proud I am of those products. But if I go home and I never tell them about my projects, but I tell them how many YouTube subscribers I have, is that how you are now pitching the success of you?
It's a good question. I don't know if I talk about a lot of that stuff with my son. I think.
Well, I mean, you said you changed so that way they do what they see and not do what they're told. So what are you painting for that 8-year-old?
I'm painting that I'm going after my dreams, what I believe I need to do in this moment, that I work hard, that I'm still there for him, that I provide for my family, that I love my wife, that I love him, that I'm not afraid to show that we have fun together, that we laugh. Like those are all the things, right? It's obviously the YouTube subscribers or the money, which I think is also important. I actually do talk about investing. I'm starting to like plant seeds of investing with my son, because I wish I knew about that when I was younger. But I think just a general interest in living and constantly improving. So one of my values is mastery, and perfection is not possible because nobody's perfect. So it's really not a good thing to aim for at all. But I do believe in mastery, and mastery to me is just being better than I was yesterday. So if I'm constantly improving and I'm constantly getting better and I'm not afraid to make mistakes and learn from them and continue moving forward, I think that's powerful.
Agreed. 100%. I feel like maybe we asked the wrong questions, or I did, and it took me down a road where we were gauging, and I think it can happen. I think I've watched people on social media gain 1,000 followers or 10,000 followers, and they change their outlook on that dopamine hit changes who they are and what their values are. And I think you can do all the things you're saying, Casey, as long as your values are still intact.
Yeah, and I think that's where social media comes in, and where things have changed and will continue to change. When a lot of this started, it was the same thing. You look at Fine Home Building, JLC, this old house, and obviously there's a business surrounding that, but so much of that is just to put out information to help people, to make people better, to uplift the community, to have customers question not only what you're doing, but what the guy that they hired before you is doing, or the person that they're entertaining for a potential new job's doing it, right? It's to put out all of this. And there wasn't a monetary you weren't making money on that. You know, it was just putting out content for the sake of putting out content. And the format and the world has changed now, and it was always there for other businesses, and it's changed for construction now. And people realize, you know, with digital marketing and all of these companies, you know, it doesn't make sense to give money to Fine Home Building and be in a magazine where they can get tons of exposure through Instagram, through YouTube. So now, you know, that's like where the money is and where it's going. And I think that gray line between putting out content for the sake of bettering the industry and putting out content for clicks and views and to make money, that line is getting blurred. And it's a shame that, you know, the good content right now, like what you believe is whatever you see, and it's not necessarily the best information. So like when you are pumped with building science material because there's somebody who just has the owns that platform, and there's 100 other people who have so much better knowledge of that, and it's not about making money. That's what's tough for me, because like all of these people who really want to do right and put out good information and good material are getting squashed by, you know, whoever basically is owning that algorithm, which isn't necessarily the best thing for our industry. It comes down to money and clicks and ad money and revenue, and it's not necessarily about the quality of content as much as who's going to see it. And that kind of goes back to what John's saying, where I think that, you know, things may come and that growth may be organic, but it has to be, you know, it has to be authentic from the get-go. And we're losing a lot of that, and a lot of people are jumping on board with putting out content for the sake of putting out content and to make money on it, which is understandable. Why wouldn't you do that? Strike while the iron's hot. There's an opportunity to make money, but it's that there's a thin line between doing that and kind of whoring yourself out. And I'm not saying that you're whoring yourself out. I'm just saying the industry as a whole, where it's like, even a lot of main influencers and everything else, and it's like, it's fucking product pitching just left, or I don't believe anything that you say, because it's just about what tool you're using, what product you're using, and who's paying you the most amount of money.
Yeah, it's tricky when you need to start navigating that. We obviously don't have that issue yet. I think it would be a good problem if somebody was coming to you with tools and products and you have to choose which one you actually believe in.
Yeah.
But that is tricky. How do you get through the noise, right? And that's what we're trying to figure out. Have we figured it out? No, we haven't figured it out, and maybe that's why our growth hasn't been as quick as I'd like it to be, because we're not whoring ourselves out, I guess, right? We're putting out what we think is good content, but we are studying it more now to figure out, okay, well, why did this post do better than that post, right? We still created the content, it's still content that we believed in, but what are the numbers showing us? And I think that's our duty, is if we do have great content, we do have a lot of stuff to share, how do we get it out in front of more people? That's the question, without paying for clicks, right? It's not just about the clicks. We want the right people to click on it, right?
That's exactly right, and that's true. What is so disappointing to me is that, like, that's what we've succumbed to. It's not about just, you know, that you put out a book and it's like, we're going to go to the book that has the most valuable knowledge, you know, for whatever price point that is, or we're going to go to the website that has the most accurate content, accurate knowledge that can explain. No, it's like, we're going to find a way to get our stuff in front of you so that it kind of fits this algorithm. And I'm not saying that that's you. I'm just saying that that's what it's about now. And like, you can't just focus on putting out good content if you want it to be seen. Like, my Instagram grew when I just put out content for the sake of putting out content. And then once there's an algorithm in place, like at this point now, I don't really post that much. I have other things that are a higher priority for me, but your account just like dies and doesn't grow. And like the initial years of that, where it was just putting out quality content and quality engagement, has changed now to hitting this algorithm for growth, which it's like it's all for the wrong reasons. And it's a shame that that's like what we have to do and what we have to navigate. Like Nick and Doug spend how much time trying to figure out what's going to get clicks for their YouTube channel. And it's like the fact that they're putting out high quality content at their own expense isn't enough. And that's like so disappointing to me that that's kind of where we are as an industry. It happened fast.
It
Yeah, I
did.
don't think it's just this industry. I think it's just the world and how the world works.
It is, but like our industry is always so far behind, right? So we were on this lag and it wasn't like that forever. And now, basically like the media companies and these large YouTube channels in our industry, their building company is not where they make money. They make money on their YouTube and their digital media. And now that building company is just a way to have these people come to them and use their products. They don't necessarily really care what happens with that building company, what they're putting out there, what they're building, as long as they have an avenue to basically run all of these products through. And for me, it's like, are you really helping the industry at that point? But we were always so far behind, and it was bound to happen. And it's no different than everyone else now. That's just where we are, and that's the way it's going to be. Whatever you see, you're going to use now, right? Like if it's zip system, if it's stretch tape, if it's a certain type of caulk, if it's a product that you glue your miters together with, it's like nobody questions whether it's right or wrong or the best product. It's just like, well, I saw it 6 times, so we should use that too.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, right? And I guess that's where marketing works for those businesses, right? If they get enough people to talk about their product, then obviously people are going to believe in it. Now, is that how you and I make our decisions? No, because we're going to go out and do the research. I think that's also why we get the clients that we get, right? Because they're trusting our knowledge and not the knowledge of or whatever the ad said than when they were scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or whatever it may be.
But that's what these companies are using. They're using that mindset that you just described.
That's marketing.
And they're no, but you're how do I say this politely?
We can be rude here.
You're whoring out that mindset to then take that money and put that product on your page that people thought that you were taking this and going, hey, I do the research, I take the 10 years of experience, and I only use these products. But in reality is you're working on a side deal, so it doesn't say sponsored up top, and it's not say paid advertising with. You're then sliding that into that persona that you've created. That's the glitch. And again, I say go for it. I just think it and the whole thing is understand
the person and the product, right? So personally,
if someone came to you right now and said, I'm going to give you 10 grand to use Giant Ladder, we already use them. But let's say you don't use that product. Okay. And you take the 10 grand because it would make your life easier. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, to build this marketing company end of your division. You would take that because you're willing to give up whatever. I'm cool with that product, even though you may have never used it before, because the value is there for you.
We would only, I say this now, because we have gotten sponsorships before, right? For that show. We only went for sponsorships for products that we believed in and that we believed were good for that project. Right. So I think that's up to the business. So when we're talking sponsorships and ads and stuff like that, if you're going to play that, you need to make sure that they still align with the values of the business.
And that can be done, John, like this old house has done that, right? And they only use certain products and certain tools, and like they don't want it to be ad placement. But it's few and far between. And it's like, if you don't play the game, then you're not even in the mix. Like you have to play that game and you have to entertain those vendors to kind of be able to be in the mix there. And if you don't, like they'll just go to somebody down the street who has, like equal analytics that's going to whore themselves out, because why wouldn't they? Like if they're going to send it to you and it's not anything that you believe in, and you're going to get this product and then not really flaunt it, why wouldn't they send it to somebody who's like a known tool influencer? Like it would just make way more sense to go to that account where they just put as much information out there as possible about it. There's not that many people and companies and periodicals and influencers that I find really truly authentically represent the industry. And I think that it is tough to do. And it's not, our industry isn't any different. It's the same thing, with like the music industry and TV and movies and auto. It's the same crap. It's just it makes it a little bit harder for customers and for contractors, people who are looking
And kids.
for that knowledge. Yeah, it makes it a little bit harder for them to really dig in and find what is the right product, what is the right information, when there's just this mass and this flood of horse shit that's put out there because somebody's funding that horse shit and that's getting the most amount of clicks. So that's what's in front of their face.
At the end of the day too, like for us, it takes a lot of time and money and energy to create the content that we put out. We need to generate revenue somehow, right? So however that revenue gets generated, if it's a sponsorship or something, it needs to be generated so that we can continue to put out that content, unless if people are just going to start paying to see our videos. So as a business, when you're looking at that, you need to figure out where you can make money. So I find if you can do it properly, then I don't see any issues with getting sponsorships, as long as it agrees with that business.
Yeah, and I think that's what's important there. It has to be a product that you believe in, a company that you believe in, and something that you can stand behind. It shouldn't just be something to take some money from somebody, because I don't think that that's necessarily helping the industry as a whole. It is a little bit convoluted right now, and this is not speaking to you, or your YouTube channel or anything like that. It's just the industry as a whole. People have to do so much more than put out good work to be successful right now. It's like, and everyone's busy, but when things slow down, where people are finding companies, and if it's Instagram and it's social media or products, it makes it a little bit harder for everyone to kind of dig through the weeds and find out what is truly a good product, what's truly a good company, and what isn't right now, because there's money being dumped in that's kind of putting a shadow over all of that.
This is definitely a conversation that Nick should have been in.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Because he's 100% probably the complete opposite of everything that Tyler and I have just said.
No, and like I said, I don't have an opposition to it. I wouldn't do something. I guess a couple of years back, I did a video with Fine Home Building, and it was called "Why I Build," and it was sponsored by Home Depot. And John was like, should you really be doing that video? It's sponsored by Home Depot. That's not really what we're kind of putting out as far as our podcast, our businesses. We're looking to elevate some. And for me, it wasn't about the sponsor. I wasn't getting paid from Home Depot. My pay was through Fine Home Building, which I'm sure was through Home Depot. But for me, it was an opportunity to really articulate what I'm about, who I am, and as the title puts it, why I build. And that wasn't an issue for me, and that was a good fit for me. And it was, the problem, I wasn't sitting on a Home Depot bucket. It wasn't, a pitch for Home Depot. It came up at the end, and I was good with that. That was fine with me. And I think, it's not it's not a single solitary answer. It's not a broad stroke that says this is right and this is wrong. It's all situational, and it depends on the sponsor and what it's for and everything else. But I do think that you have to be careful, and you want to make sure that you still remain as like a source for quality information and for quality builds and kind of for what you stand for and believe in, rather than just kind of finding a way to fund another venture within your company.
And for the record, Casey and the listeners, I had a problem with Tyler doing that back then.
Yeah,
I was
you
offered
did.
the same thing, and I was like, not doing it.
Yeah. He was
So,
like pissed at me, and I was like, oh, whatever. I still I stand behind my decision.
and I appreciate it. It made me rethink my approach, because obviously I value what Tyler says, and he told me, he goes, it's a way for me to get my story out.
Yeah.
And he's right. I couldn't wrap my head around letting Home Depot have a piece of my pie. And I get how he did. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. It seemed like the impossible. That I was like, I go there as a necessary evil, but now I want to help promote them in a way.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm screwed up. I get it. I'm used to it.
No, I think it's a case by case. And I think at the end of the day, it's just you have to protect your own brand and your own company, and it can't be at the cost of making a quick buck.
Yeah, and I feel like I've tried it. You go to my YouTube channel and I have like 4 episodes, and they're all episode 1 of like another series that we want to start. I don't get past episode 1, and I would love to do more. I would love to tell the story that, like, to Tyler's point, my point is, I would love to be the exception and tell what we do and what our story is. I have not been able to find a line that permits me to do that without compromising my day-to-day.
Or your credibility.
True, that too. Yeah. I was just, whether it's time management and I'm in my business too much, and maybe that's something I need to focus on, but I have been able to wrap my head around it, where I feel like I have to be somewhere else that's more valuable than in front of a camera. But I'd love to do it. I really would.
Depends on what you're valuing, right? So,
I guess it's not. That means I'm valuing what I know, and I want to get it out more. It's valuing my day to day. If I have 10 hours in that day, and I want to value not being home with my family at that time, we're not coaching, or I skip lunch to do a video or do a story. I used to do that. I used to do it all the time. And I used to tell every site guy or every person on my site that what you do shouldn't stay between you, me, and the people on this site. And it should be told through an IG story or through a post and rambling on about what you love. I'm all about that. And because the core value is there. You're just trying to express what you do and put it in a window that's seen through IG. And I love it. I would love to be able to tell. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I've failed miserably, and I've had great success in it. And I'd love to be able to save someone some time. And if that meant to do that through social media and through YouTube, I'd love to do more of it. I haven't been able to balance the time, whether I've taken on more projects, and maybe it's meaning taking one less project on and taking on a YouTube channel. But my core value is building, not building a reputation based on YouTube, but teach their own.
Damn. No,
mic drop.
No, I agree with that, and like I said, I think that there's a fine line there, and it depends on what your goals are, what your needs are, what type of lifestyle you want to support, and what you think is going to get you to where you want to be. And I think that if you are authentic and you're genuine, and you take the path of like this old house did, where it's not all ad placement and it's not product placement, and you don't lose that credibility with your viewership and your customers, and your brand remains a credible brand, then I don't see any issues with that. But I'm also very selective when it comes to that, just because I think at the end of the day, when all this blows over, I want to ensure that my brand maintains its credibility and its authenticity, and that's really important to me, even more so than money. And maybe I'm foolish for doing that, and probably have left a lot of money on the table, but at least I can kind of, that's the decision that I made, and that's the path that I want to take for now. And who knows, that may change next week when somebody comes to me and knocks on my door and offers me a ton of money to get in bed with a brand that I don't believe in, but we'll see. As of now, it hasn't happened. Maybe you just haven't gotten the right offers. But Nick definitely would have been been a good add on to this conversation, because he's like on top of all of that stuff and has, his own little media side gig that's going on with Doug, and is trying to navigate that entire side of the business. I don't have that. He wears a lot of hats,
and he's super talented with it.
I know.
Yeah.
I can't wear that many hats. It's tough.
Casey, I hope that this doesn't come across wrong when we're trying to, use you as a punching bag. No, it is.
No. I think these are great conversations, right? I don't think conversation should be just everybody agreeing with everything, right? And I don't think that there's anything here I don't think we're necessarily in disagreement about anything. I think we're all just sharing our stances on where we stand and what we believe works for us at this point in time, right? So I think everybody can do whatever they need to do, right? But I think what we do agree on is that we're not going to do anything that affects our brand, our reputation, or what our values are. We're going to stick to that. And our values can be different, right? Everybody has different values, different beliefs.
It's the beauty of this industry. Everyone has a different way of getting to the finish line. And it's always successful.
And that's business too, right? It's just whatever you decide that your goals are, what you want to achieve in business, then do what you need to do to achieve those goals. It's, as long as it's legal and above ground, you're not hurting people, then who am I to judge and do whatever and say anything that, what you're doing isn't working or isn't right.
No, yeah, 100%. And I guess a lot of where it comes from internally is, having respect for, like you said, like the artisan and the crafts people, and a lot of our industry who doesn't have the access to be able to do what we're doing, or, do the type of projects that people want to invest money in, or companies want to kind of throw ad money at. There's a big part of this industry that can't tap into that. And I do want to protect those people as much as possible, and protect the industry as much as possible, to kind of isolate them from a lot of that noise, to ensure that they have, a means to making money and an income and a career for more than just kind of striking while the iron's hot. So I know a lot of it just comes internally for me from selfishly wanting to kind of protect this industry. And it's very special to me, and preserving the craft is very important to me, and maintaining the integrity through construction and through the trades is important. So I do want, it does disappoint me to see people kind of whoring themselves out to make a quick dollar, where I think that there's more to it than that. And, that's probably why I'm so opinionated when it comes to this type of stuff. But none of that was directed at you or what you're doing or YouTube channel or anything in general. I think, putting out quality content is very important for people. And I think that if you can help one person out, you can help two people out, you can get a single job lead that pays for all of that content generation for the build of a lifetime, then it's all worth it in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to go through life saying, I wish I should have done that. I'd rather go through life trying things and failing at stuff than going through life and not trying things and saying, I wish I should have tried that, just to see what could happen.
Yeah.
That's just the way I look at things too.
I mean, even I feel like for your business, having this YouTube channel where you have potential customers and leads coming to you where it's like, hey, go pop on over here to see what we do. Like, that's why initially I started my Instagram, where it's like, if you want to see what we do, and especially like you said, you're looking for customers to sign a work contract prior to high level budgeting, high level design, this is a perfect outlet for you to send potential leads to, architects to be like, hey, this is what we do. This is what's important to us. This is what we believe in. If we seem like a good fit, let's have a conversation from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So next topic real quick is one of the topics you hit on was the comfort of a home, the health of a home, not passive house. What's your approach on that? Just because I think that's a massive topic that should be discussed, that we build amazingly healthy homes and then people drench them with crap, brand new products and off gassing, et cetera, et cetera. What's your take? What's your thought on it?
So I think by default, if you build a efficient home, you will have a comfortable home. And to your point, it can be healthy unless you put all sorts of stuff in there that makes it unhealthy. So the biggest thing for us, this is where the building science comes into play. For us, I guess you have similar temperature to what we have here. Yeah, sorry, where were you? You're Boston and
New Jersey.
New Jersey. Yeah, so New Jersey wouldn't get as cold. But anyways, here in South, I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but we're getting like minus 30 degree weather. It can be colder than that with the wind chill. We hit over plus 40 with the Humidex. I think we hit 42 this summer. So we're getting both extremes. So we kind of have to build for extreme heat and extreme cold, extreme humidity and dryness. So the biggest thing that we really push when it comes to comfort is we need to explain to people the importance of the air barrier and air tightness, and make sure that they understand the difference between an air barrier and a vapor barrier versus a weather barrier. So there's a lot of conversations around that, not only with homeowners, but also with subcontractors, right? Who say, oh, I've been doing it like this for 30 years. And, it's been right. Yeah. But, we've learned a lot in the last 30 years, right? So I
told John I wanted to get t-shirts made that say that.
Yeah.
It's like everyone loves saying that.
Yeah. But you can't say, yeah, you've been doing it wrong for 30 years. But at the time it was right. It just, now we know more, right? The first attempts at building passive homes or building comfortable, efficient homes were not very good because they didn't understand the building science. Now we have the technology to understand a lot of the building science. So we can build a comfortable, efficient, and healthy home as long as you have the right team involved and you actually have the right tests along the way to make sure that it's performing the way it's supposed to be performing. So I don't know how far where you want to get into.
Well, I guess energy efficiency is great. I just didn't know, I think we had someone on that was talking about carbon footprint of a build. And I think that's super interesting. How it all comes together is, everyone will give you the whole, yeah, I want to go green and I want to have a Tesla, but yet it takes a huge amount of fossil fuels and everything else to create the batteries and everything else that goes into a Tesla. So what's really the offset? So I guess since it was on the queue that was sent to us, is that just what is, your stance on how do we can make a comfortable home? I get that Energy Star, it used to be like a 1, 2, and 3, and that got evaporated. And LEED, same thing. I think it's an obnoxious kind of game plan to use to make an efficient house, because you can still have a pig of a house that's a LEED home, silver. I built one, and that's all I needed to see, was that it can still be a pig on consumption, even though it's a LEED home. And I think passive house is the standard to go by, and understanding how to get there. I think Nick's in he's getting certified, and my buddy from Greenside just got certified. But that's all great about comfort, but a healthy home. How are we creating a healthy home and being conscious of it? Some VOC paints have more chemicals in them than the ones that off gas a ton. How are we understanding that in our industry, and how it evolves, and how are we compensating for it?
Well, I think the first step to a comfortable home is making sure that you make that air. I'll go back to the air tightness. You have to make your house airtight, and then you have to mechanically ventilate your home. So I'm a big advocate for getting rid of any fans that blow air outside or suck air from your home and blow it outside. And the reason is because every time you turn on one of those fans, whether it's a bathroom fan or a kitchen range hood, that's sucking in air through your walls, through the leaky holes somewhere in your house, right? If you're blowing air out, it's got to come in somewhere. So I'm a fan of getting rid of all of those, putting in an ERV, and then having that run 24/7. So now you have 24/7, like fresh air coming into your home 24/7. It gets filtered and it's getting preconditioned by the air going outside. So you're controlling, think of it like the lungs of your house, right? You're filtering, you breathe in through your nose, you filter the air that goes into your body, and then you blow it out your mouth or your nose, wherever you want to blow it. Same sort of thing. And then we have to understand what that means, right? So if you make your house more airtight, people will say, well, your walls have to breathe. And I say, well, yes, your walls do have to breathe, but they have to breathe like your skin breathes. You don't want to breathe like your lungs breathe, right? You want to be able to perspire when you need to, but other than that, you don't want air to be able to travel through your skin, right?
You want to sweat out that alcohol.
Exactly.
Smell it.
So you want to be able to get rid of the stuff. So in our house, especially here where we live, where you have both extremes, you have the extreme hot and extreme cold. The way the wall assembly works is that it flips from one time of the year to the other, right? So one time of the year, it's colder on the inside, and at the other time of the year, it's colder on the outside. So your wall has to be able to perspire in both directions, right? We just have to assume that moisture is going to get into our walls somehow, and we need to understand, okay, well, what's going to happen to that? So when that happens, if we don't build our wall properly, if we don't make it airtight and we don't control the ventilation in our house, we could end up with a sick home. We could end up with mold that we can't see, but eventually it will start affecting our health, for example. Or you have those bathroom fans, like I mentioned before. If you are building with products in your wall that are not that great, as you turn on those fans or you turn on your 1,000 CFM range hood, which isn't efficient either, by the way, that's going to suck in all the pollutants through your walls into your house. So that to me is the first step to making a healthy home. The second step, we typically have less control over because, we can educate them on their hardwood and the VOCs like of the products, like the paint or the cabinetry or what it's usually the stain or whatever that's going on it, right? But we can't control what furniture they're putting into their house after the fact, right? We can't control any of those other pieces, those products, whether it's a cabinet, whether it's a couch, a chair, whatever, those could be off-gassing as well. But if you've made your house airtight, if you've controlled the ventilation through an ERV, you have fresh air that's getting rid of a lot of those VOCs and helping.
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, how are we understanding that? I feel like the next step, like when I learned that, I was putting in the Nest thermostats everywhere and loved them, and then it was actually Matt Rising that turned us on to this kind of air like sniffer. I forget what it was called. What was it called?
That's the technical term.
Yeah. Well, it was understanding what was in the house, and it was turning green when you had good air. I have it at my house. The problem is I put it in my house because I want to understand what I'm going to get from clientele for like feedback. It's like you ever ask a client, even I had we were putting this whole belt slinger thing for stone, and I like looked up the house on Google Earth and then Street View. So I wanted to understand what my vendor was going to look up. So when he called me and goes, "Hey, am I looking at something crazy?" I'm like, all those trees were cut down. I want to kind of be that step ahead. And we've been putting in a lot of HRVs, heat recovery. That way, when you are bringing in this fresh air, you're not just bringing in 20-degree air or negative degree air. You're trying to cross-pollinate that air with a little bit of heat recovery. And I wanted to understand what the next step was in understanding air quality. An HRV, you can have it on consistently running and not get rid of the penetrations and fans, because you have to control that moisture that you're creating in a house. Like the showers are going to create moisture. What are you going to do with that?
That's where an ERV comes in.
No, I know it. When I'm just saying it differently than you, is that like even when we're building the house, is being cognizant of where this moisture is coming from. We plaster. You guys probably do level 5, but plaster is a huge moisture content creator. So like if I put that process in one of my houses and I am doing an airtight assembly, besides obviously the penetrations for windows and doors, I'm introducing moisture. What am I doing with that moisture? How am I controlling it in my build? Am I putting in a dehumidifier to capture that water that's being in there? Or it's going to go in and get sucked into the subfloor, get sucked into the walls, and then later on find its way out. So that's why we prime all our plaster walls once they've cured. So that way, not trapping in moisture, but I'm understanding where moisture is going. So that way I can introduce flooring, cabinetry, trim, all that stuff. Otherwise, this moisture is trapped. It's like a virus inside your house. But like the next part of it is air quality. I love the fact that the Ecobee has a sensor in it to understand what the parts per million is of, pollutants in your house. That's what should be connected to the ERV and HRV. So that way, if it comes in higher, your kid comes home from sports with a new uniform on, it then kicks on the HRV to a variable speed that's higher. Thinking for the house, thinking for us and pollutants, because there's so many times often that the indoor air quality, especially for us in the winter when you're 10 degrees, is worse than what's outside. And that's when our kids are getting more asthma attacks and they're getting a lot of these things. So what's your approach to, obviously passive house is the higher standard and we'd all love to get to that, but for actual comfort and quality for that level, what do you think the next step is for that for you guys?
Like what else would we do on top of what we're already doing? Is that what you're asking?
What are you doing that an HRV is going to solve one thing and putting in an assembly that's great, but what are you doing for the longevity of a home for it to be healthy? For that, and we talked about comfort and your thermostat's going to be X amount. So that way, the house you knock down, the new house you put up is going to be more efficient, even though it's bigger, but what are we doing for that? The health part of it, like introducing that stuff. It's not just going to be a slam dunk. What do you think the future is for comfort? Like that part, health inside a home?
Well, some of this, so if we're looking about what the future, I think there are sensors out there that will sense that and connect to your ERV. I haven't seen them yet, but I believe that you can get something like that, or it's being worked on. I don't know what those sensors read. So for example, even radon, in order to get proper readings, you need to be reading it consistently. And I think it takes a certain amount of time before you know what your radon reading is. I don't think that those air sniffers or whatever they are read mold, for example. So I don't think they can sense mold. So like I said, I still go back to the first step is the number one step is making sure that your envelope is built properly and then ventilating that or bringing in fresh air and getting rid of air properly. And then beyond that, if you're adding sensors, that would be the next level. There are products out there, like there's drywall. I don't know how true it is. I think is a Certainty that does a drywall that's supposed to like absorb VOCs. Is it Certainty? Yeah, there's a drywall company. I can't remember which drywall. It might be Duroc. Anyways, there's a drywall company out there that has drywall that will absorb VOCs somehow.
And then do what with them?
It takes it in there like a tree takes in carbon, apparently. So as long as you don't burn it or it's supposed to absorb those VOCs. I saw that like 4 or 5 years ago at a show. Don't know how true that is or how well it works.
I want to see how they're proving that.
Yeah.
They're going to hire a bunch of influencers and punch it out into their product and then just be like, hey, everyone loves it. I guess
when you demo your bathroom, you have to get out of the house for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I guess, Casey, I wasn't looking to speculate. I just didn't know what it is that you were kind of seeing the future. Like, what are you doing? I think like I've been putting the thermostats in all of them because I want to have that ability long-term, just trying to think outside the box. We can build something for it to be designed to be efficient to a certain level. But then once people live in it, I think that's the missing loop is that once they start living in it in this world of Amazon and stuff you can buy with Zappos and everyone else, products are going to get introduced to a house and houses were never designed to change, have air changes, especially as we get more efficient for the amount of product and off-gassing we're introducing to houses on an everyday basis. So I guess that's what my concern was and didn't know if you've kind of had a brain fart towards it or what,
Well, I agree. Like if you're running your ERV though 24/7 and it's ventilating, that's actually doing a good job. Like we do have a lot of science on that front now. In the passive house that we built 7 years ago, not the one that I'm in now, I remember leaving that house. So we had 2 ERVs in that house running 24/7. I left that house for about a month, went to Florida with their mildew, mold infested places, came back, and my house was empty and it smelled like fresh wood when I walked in. Right. That to me means that we did a good job at making sure that everything was ventilated properly and sealed up. Right. Imagine leaving a typical home unoccupied for a month in the winter. It's not going to smell fresh when you walk back in there. Right. So that was kind of like the nail in the coffin, so to speak, of me being sold on passive house, even after having lived in it for a couple of years at that point already. But that doesn't, I don't think you need to go to the passive house extreme to get that level of comfort and that level of health. I think you can do it with, like, a new standard here in Canada is net zero energy. It's about 30-40% better than minimum building code, but it still focuses on air tightness, right? So if you can it's less about the insulation. You want a decent level of insulation levels, and you want exterior insulation, but the focus is still trying to get that place as airtight as possible, and then doing that ventilation, filtering the air, bringing it in. And like the Nest thermostat, I'm not as familiar with those. Sorry, not the Nest, the Ecobee ones you mentioned. I don't know what they're reading, but what happens when they read pollutants in the air?
It's the same as the Foobot. The Foobot is the name of the one that I didn't look it up, by the way. I just remembered it. It's the one that Matt told us about.
The sniffer.
The sniffer. And that's what I had. I put it in my house because I want to understand what my client's going to read. Because Matt brought up a great point. He's like, some of our clients are higher end and they're going to get this in just in general. And they're going to tell their attorney, well, it turns red all the time. What is the next step for us? What is that next step? And I guess that's what I keep trying to figure out. And this question, I raised it to, I think it was Ross Trethewey. And I go, what are you understanding? What's next for this? And he's the one who turned me on to the thermostat, which I loved before. It's one of the first smart thermostats out there, but they're the ones that are evolving the process where people are going to live the way people live. Like we say about the ERV and running it all the time, it's going to solve it. How many times have we said, hey, we're going to put a bath fan in a bathroom and it's going to solve the moisture issues? And then you come back a month, a year later in a brand new house and they've never run the fan. And you've built it, you've put everything in place, and people are people. And they're going to get the bill for that ERV and go, hey, can I turn this thing down? What's it doing anyways? I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, obviously we have to put a radon system in, which knocks that whole thing out of whack. That way you've got it controlled. I just feel like, how do we understand where we take it out of the client's hands, where this smart thermostat, whether it's a thermostat, which I think is great because it's in all the areas of the home and it's attached to your HRV. It's the same way we don't worry about combustible air when you put in a 1200 CFM hood. Like, it's going to suck out the draft for every fireplace. That's why you have to have fresh air intake. It's like, but someone's created that system and now it's just part of code. And whether it's your first day in the industry or your 20th, it's already solved for you. I guess I liked your thought with passive house and all that. I just didn't know if it had evolved anywhere to involve comfort and health inside a home. Like, I love the conversation about carbon. I love that. Like, that is like the next step is how are we building these things? Where's it coming from and how far away? LEED had a part of that, but I don't know. We can kill that one.
Yeah. The carbon footprint's an interesting conversation too, but it's the, like, foam and concrete are the biggest culprits for the large carbon footprint. Right. So, and I think the Endeavor Center does a lot of work on that. And the future, I think you're totally right in that humans will be humans and they're going to, unplug the ERV or HRV because they don't understand it. I think you need to get to a point where somehow that smart thermostat will do everything and predict everything for the homeowner. Because if you gave, like, my wife, for example, give her the smart thermostat, she's not going to know what to do with that or understand. She doesn't understand anything, nor does she care to understand.
Did you just have to look and check if she was behind you?
I know, he paused.
No.
Yeah, definitely.
Again, I don't know if she doesn't care about that stuff. Like, she cares about health and she understands that I have control over the home side. She's like totally focused on the food and what we put into our body. And I'm less focus on that because I know she's got it under control, right? So it's kind of a team. But if she was like in her own house, it would have to be like automated somehow, right? Where it's exactly it is if there's pollutants, something comes on to get rid of them. If it knows that when she goes to bed, it wants this temperature. So it takes some learning, but it needs to be simple somehow. The simpler we can make it, the better, I think, the more adoption that we'll have for it. We have to get to simple systems, or else like most people just don't care, right? They just want to be able to turn their thermostat on or off or something like that. They don't want to have to think about they don't even want to change filters or clean filters for that matter, right?
They don't even want to change light bulbs, bro.
No.
Let's be honest.
It's true.
I mean, it's going to come down to minimum code too. I know that your codes up there are more stringent than our codes down here. And like to kind of enforce those standards, not necessarily at such a high level, but trying to build more efficient homes than what code requires right now is going to cost a lot of money for a lot of people who don't have it. And it's really going to end up limiting the build that they can afford, which like I don't think is necessarily a bad thing because I believe that we live so far outside of our means right now. But you know, somebody who can afford an 8,000 square foot house now that's not built to that standard, you know, how much are they going to afford if we are mandated to build to that standard? And I think until that happens, the impact is going to be limited to people who are just choosing to build this way, right? Because like that's just what they want.
Yeah, we're not going to see a big price drop until the demand increases, and we're not going to see that demand increase for a lot of these products until it's forced upon people.
Sure.
Right. So it's unfortunate, and no politician's going to get up there and force people to do this stuff because they just will never win, obviously, and they would be hated and they would go their career. So
yeah, and I mean, even as far as price dropping with materials go is one thing, but it's a very labor intensive process as well. So there's not that, you know, there's no get around when it comes to that. But you know, right now people can afford to build really huge, inefficient homes that have a massive carbon footprint and, you know, aren't air sealed. And that's just the way that it is. And until somebody kind of puts their foot down and requires us to be a little bit smarter, I don't know how much, you know, things are going to change because it's that top tier people who can afford to kind of do this and live a lifestyle that, you know, can afford that. And it's not going to be the bulk of people, which is a shame because like it should be, you know, but people shouldn't be building these huge development houses that are like 6,000 square feet right next to each other with, you know, no air sealing, minimum insulation package, a ton of framing lumber in them. It's silly.
Yeah, they obviously do good at marketing.
Yeah.
They're not going to market. Come buy our house. That's the worst possible house we're allowed to build by law.
No, I mean, it's square footage, right? That's what people are going in and buying. And they're saying, how much are we getting for our square foot? How many square feet can we build? But I think that we could live in a lot less than we do right now, which would be better for the environment. And, you know, help out on that entire level.
Yeah, I think something's going to have to give though, right? As prices continue to go up or our dollar continues to lose value, people are going to have to reduce those means somehow, or technology is going to have to get better. Like there's 3D printing in houses happening now. Construction, in my opinion, is the one area that hasn't really been affected by technology much, right? So yeah, there's technology going into the houses, but there's not much going into how we build the houses. That could have a huge impact on the cost of homes and how we build them.
Why don't you think that's happened sooner?
I don't think the technology's there yet. I know University of California has been 3D printing homes for, I think, 13 or 14 years they've been testing with stuff, but I think there's still a lot to go there because it's really just the structure. And I don't even know if that's good for the carbon footprint, depending on what the material that they're using either. If you think of what goes into a wall too, there's quite a bit. And if you basically need a machine that can move, or you need to print something that you can move after the fact, right? And then there's obviously all sorts of logistical issues with that. Renovations is another tricky one, right? I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Like, you're going to get a machine, unless we have robots that can basically do what we do, going into a house, 100, 150-year-old house, and ripping it apart and putting it back together. I think there's going to be work there all the time. But I think the way we build houses is going to change. There's a lot more, I don't know about where you are, but there is more push for manufactured panels, right? So you have a panelized house. A lot of it's being done in a factory, and it shows up and you kind of assemble it on site. But there is a lot more of that happening now.
Yeah, we had somebody on we discussed that with, and like even that is basically for them to maximize profit and efficiencies and not necessarily lower the cost of the build, right? So like it's those individual companies who are developing these systems and processes that they can build in a conditioned, stable environment, controlled environment, and they can maximize their profits and efficiencies rather than just like lower the overall cost of the build, which I think that systems like that, it shouldn't just be more money in your pocket at that point. I think on a larger scale, it should help reduce the overall cost associated with it.
Yeah, it definitely can if they had to, right? If they needed to make the sales. But if people keep paying what they're paying, then why wouldn't they? Why would they reduce their price?
No, for sure. I just think large scale, if we're looking to move in that direction, it doesn't make sense to make a lateral move just for the sake of making a lateral move. People will do it if there's more money in their pocket, or, if it brings the overall cost down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think we should be aiming, towards making something. I don't think it should be reducing our profit margins. But I think that if we can make a comparable amount by being more efficient, and then reduce the overall cost. But I don't know. I think that our industry as builders, we get pinched enough, and it's like how many people are going to be willing to kind of pinch their margins, unless you said it's about getting the sale at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like everyone that we deal with and on our end, we're always getting squeezed and looking to give people more for the dollar. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I'm a giver.
Yeah. But you gotta squeeze somewhere.
Right?
You gotta squeeze someone.
I don't know, Casey, what else did you want to hit, man? I mean, I think we've hit you with enough. What do you got for us? Anything before we wrap?
No, I think we touched on a lot there. I think we touched on everything that was in my notes.
Cool, man.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how much, and it's nice getting, people from Canada where their building requirements are tighter than ours. And I think it does give you guys a leg up and an opportunity to kind of showcase what you guys can do, because we're not required to do a lot of that stuff. And I know a lot of areas up there just have tighter building codes than we do.
Yeah, we're definitely Ontario is really good where we are in terms, and we still have a long way to go. I think everywhere has a long way to go if we're going to have a big impact on the environment as we need to. But Ontario is doing quite well. Canada's doing quite well.
Yeah. All right. So I want you to plug your YouTube channel. You have this academy that you're putting out, business page, website, all that stuff.
Yeah, everything's The Conscious Builder. So Conscious Builder is on YouTube. Find us from there, you can really find all of the social stuff. If you go to YouTube, you can find us at The Conscious Builder. And then if you want to check out the Academy, if you're a builder, you can head to theconsciousbuilderacademy.com.
So how come it was The Conscious Builder and not The Conscientious Builder?
Because being conscious is a state of awareness, so becoming more aware. So the way I see it is that our role is to help raise the consciousness, the awareness of people so that they can make better decisions, conscious decisions. When we build, because everything we do, like you guys, is all custom and we're working for the client, it's not necessarily going to be 100% sustainable, for example, but at least they can make 100% conscious decisions when it comes to their their product. So that's the way we're approaching it, is helping raise that awareness around building better homes, building those healthy, comfortable, and efficient homes.
So not the unconscious builder.
No.
Don't pick him. All right, Casey. Well, thanks. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Nick had some things to take care of this week. I'm back off of a 2-week hiatus. I was wrapping up a job before going away, and then went away and took 2 weeks off. So the guys took care of things in my absence. We're trying to do Nick some justice in his absence, so bear with us. Or thank you for bearing with us throughout the podcast. You know where to find us. We could use some reviews on iTunes. I don't know what number we are. I know we're getting close to a milestone, so we're trying to do that. John has his Survey Monkey set up so that you can give us some insight as to what you like, what you don't like, kind of shape what we're doing. And as always, we appreciate the reposts, the love, all the stories, everything else. Right, John?
953.
953. So we're getting close to 1,000.
That's our goal.
Yeah, I mean, those reviews definitely help keep us relevant as we talk today about hitting that algorithm and being present, not president, and having the engagement. So they definitely help. If you have some time to get us a review up on iTunes. Obviously, nothing less than 5-star. But we
used to hate that.
Nah, I know. I just think it's funny. I don't necessarily. I mean, I guess I don't know how those affect the rankings, but I think, you can leave whatever you want at the end of the day. All right. So, how long do you expect your build to last? Let's face it. If you're cladding your build with fiber cement siding, do you really expect it to go the long haul? Have you ever even thought about how someone will have to prep that material for the next coat of paint? Get the great look of wood with a product that wears like iron and will last as long as the rest of your build. To learn more about Duration Polyash products, please visit their website at durationmillwork.com and be sure to follow them on IG. You know what's going to be interesting to see? The second coat, third coat, when you're getting to this stuff. I know it's going to last longer, but obviously you're going to have to repaint at some point. And what that kind of age and patina is going to look like on these products. I'm excited to see that. So I do
even prep. I think the question that's being raised in that is like, if we prep like we do with a lot of other products like cedar and all that, to get it right down to bare material again so you can prime, it is a great question.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like even just the wear on it. Obviously I'm curious to see how it wears with, like the old cedar and all that stuff, because a lot of those old homes have that patina, which you're not looking for necessarily on a new build, but you're putting a product on that's going to last a long time. And it's going to be interesting to see. And I'm excited to see kind of how that patina and that wear develops over time. But I think you're going to have a better product that's not rotting, and your primers and your finish coats and all that stuff. I don't think you're going to have like the catastrophic failures where you're necessarily going to need to kind of grind down to bare surface, which I think will be super helpful. A lot of times with all that prep, it's because of failing finish on your old wood or because of water damage, which you're not going to have to deal with this stuff. So off topic, but it's what came into my head right now.
Yeah.